She vanished after one night, but when the Millionaire CEO found her again, she was raising his secret twins. The gallery doors burst open with such force that every head turned. Lucius Blackwell stood at the entrance, his 6'3" frame commanding the space like he owned it, which, given his reputation, he probably did. His steel-grey eyes scanned the room until they locked onto one person, Iris Noir, the woman who'd vanished from his penthouse 6 weeks ago without so much as a goodbye. "We need to talk." His voice cut through the champagne chatter and polite laughter. Now, Iris's wine glass trembled in her hand. The carefully constructed walls she'd built around that night, the night that had turned her entire world upside down, were about to come crashing down in the most public way possible. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back to where it all began. Welcome to Mr. Steel Rich Stories, where we bring you the most captivating romance, tales that will make your heart race and leave you breathless for more. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and become part of our family. You're about to experience a love story unlike anything you've heard before, and you definitely don't want to miss what comes next. Now, let me take you back 6 weeks. The Grand Meridian Hotel glittered against the Manhattan skyline like a jewel box filled with secrets. Inside the crystal ballroom, 200 of the city's elite clinked glasses and celebrated an engagement that was about to spectacularly implode. Iris Noir stood near the dessert table, her fingers clutching a champagne flute she hadn't touched. The emerald dress she wore, borrowed from her best friend Maya because she couldn't afford a new one, made her feel like an imposter, which, considering the circumstances, was fitting. She'd known coming here was a mistake. Her ex-boyfriend Derek was getting engaged to Victoria Sterling, daughter of one of New York's real estate moguls. The invitation had arrived at Iris's apartment 3 weeks prior, and she'd laughed at the audacity. Who invites their ex-girlfriend to their engagement party? You should go, Maya had insisted, sprawled across Iris's threadbare couch. Show him you've moved on. Show him you're thriving. Except Iris wasn't thriving. She was surviving. Barely. At 2008, she worked 2 jobs, one as a junior curator at a struggling art gallery, the other waitressing at an upscale restaurant 5 nights a week. Her studio apartment in Queens had a leaky faucet she couldn't afford to fix and a landlord who'd raised her rent twice in 18 months. She sent money home to her mother in Vermont every month, helping with her younger brother's college tuition, because their father had walked out when Iris was 16, leaving nothing but debt and broken promises. Coming to this party, surrounded by wealth she'd never possess, wearing a borrowed dress and shoes that pinched her toes, felt like self-torture. But Maya been right about one thing. Iris needed closure. She needed to see Derek happy with someone else, so she could finally let go of the 3 years they'd spent together. 3 years of her supporting his entrepreneurial dreams while he bounced from failed venture to failed venture. 3 years of her paying most of the bills while he found himself. Then he'd found Victoria Sterling and her trust fund, and suddenly Derek had found himself indeed. Iris? Oh my God, you actually came. She turned to find Stephanie, one of Derek's friends, looking at her with barely concealed pity. I wasn't sure you'd have the courage to show your face here. Courage? Iris's jaw tightened. Why wouldn't I come? Derek and I ended things amicably. Right. Amicably? Stephanie's smile was razor sharp. Well, you're braver than I thought. Watching your ex upgrade must be difficult. Before Iris could respond, the lights dimmed. A spotlight illuminated the center of the ballroom where Derek stood, microphone in hand, with Victoria draped on his arm like an expensive accessory. Thank you all for coming tonight, Derek began, his voice booming through the sound system. Victoria and I are thrilled to celebrate with the people who matter most. Iris's stomach churned. She should leave, slip out quietly, before... You know, finding the right person changes everything, Derek continued. I used to date women who had no ambition, no drive. Women are content to stay small. The room seemed to tilt. He couldn't be... But Victoria showed me what partnership really means, supporting each other's success. building something meaningful together, not dragging each other down. The words hit Iris like physical blows. Around her, people glanced in her direction. Some whispered behind raised hands. They all knew. They all knew he was talking about her. Heat flooded her cheeks. Her vision blurred. She needed air. Now, Iris pushed through the crowd, ignoring the stares and whispers. Her heels clicked against marble as she fled the ballroom. Derek's voice still echoing behind her. So grateful I didn't settle. She found herself in the hotel's bar, a dimly lit space mercifully empty, except for the bartender and one man sitting alone at the far end. "Double whiskey," Iris managed, her voice shaking. "Please." The bartender nodded sympathetically and poured her drink. She downed it in one burning gulp, welcoming the fire that traced down her throat. Anything to distract from the humiliation scorching through her veins. "Rough night?" The voice came from the man at the bar's end. Iris glanced over and felt her breath catch. He was devastatingly handsome in that dangerous way that usually meant trouble. Dark hair, perfectly styled. A jaw that could cut glass. Those grey eyes that seemed to see straight through every defense she'd ever built. His suit probably cost more than 6 months of her rent. "You could say that," Iris replied, surprised she could form words. He slid off his stool and moved closer, bringing his own drink, Scotch by the look of it. Lucius Blackwell, Iris Noir. She shook his extended hand, noting the calluses that seemed at odds with his polished appearance. "Not just a pretty rich boy, then. What brings you to drown your sorrows at the Grand Meridian, Iris Noir?" She laughed bitterly. "Public humiliation." "You?" "Private devastation." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "My father died 2 weeks ago. Tonight was supposed to be the reading of his will. Turns out he had one final way to control my life, even from the grave." The raw pain in his voice resonated with something in Iris's chest. Here was someone else who understood what it meant to be broken. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "Don't be. He was a bastard when he was alive." Lucius drained his scotch. "But he was my bastard, and now I'm stuck with his impossible conditions." They sat in comfortable silence, 2 wounded souls sharing space in the darkness. The bartender poured them each another drink without being asked. "Want to hear something pathetic?" Iris found herself saying. "I came to my ex-boyfriend's engagement party to prove I'd moved on. Instead, he used his speech to tell 200 people how worthless I am. That's not pathetic. That makes him a coward." Lucius's voice hardened. "Real men don't build themselves up by tearing others down." Something shifted in the air between them, a connection, unexpected and undeniable. Outside the bar, the engagement party continued. Inside, 2 strangers found solace in shared pain. What happened next would change both their lives forever. Hours passed in that hotel bar, though neither Iris nor Lucius seemed to notice. The bartender had long since stopped refilling their glasses, content to let them occupy the space as the rest of the world faded away. "So let me get this straight," Iris said, her initial reserve melting away with each shared confession. "Your father left you one of the largest fortunes in New York, but only if you get married within 6 months. Lucius's laugh was hollow. "Not just married and remain that way for at least a year." He knew I valued my independence above everything else. This was his way of ensuring he controlled me even in death. "That's cruel." Iris traced the rim of her empty glass. "Why would he do that?" "Because Richard Blackwell believed love was weakness. He married my mother for her connections, not affection. When she died giving birth to me, he blamed me for losing his perfect trophy wife." Lucius's jaw clenched. "He spent 32 years making sure I knew I'd never measure up to her memory." The pain in his voice made Iris's chest ache. She understood that kind of hurt, the kind that burrowed deep and never quite healed. "My father left too," she found herself saying. Different circumstances, same result. One day he was there, complaining about his job and how life had cheated him. The next day, gone. Left a note saying he needed to find his purpose, like his family wasn't purposeful enough. Lucius's eyes softened. "How old were you?" 16. My brother was 12. My mother was working part-time at a bookstore. We lost the house 6 months later. The memories still stung. I worked 3 jobs through college, graduated with a degree in art history that everyone said was useless. Maybe they were right. They weren't. Lucius leaned closer. Tell me about art. Tell me what you love about it. No one had asked her that in years. Derek had always rolled his eyes when she talked about her work, calling it impractical daydreaming. Art is proof that beauty can exist even in darkness, Iris said slowly. A painter can take their worst moment and transform it into something that moves people centuries later. It's resilience in physical form. That's not useless. That's profound. The way Lucius looked at her made something flutter in her stomach. You see meaning where others see decoration. They talked about everything. Her dreams of curating a major exhibition someday, his frustration with running a company D inherited but never wanted, her mother's declining health, his loneliness despite being surrounded by people constantly. Everyone wants something from me, Lucius admitted. Business deals, investments, connections. I can't remember the last time someone asked how I was doing and actually cared about the answer. How are you doing? Iris asked softly. He was quiet for a long moment. Until about 3 hours ago. Terrible. Now, I honestly don't know. But this, talking to you, it's the first time in weeks I felt like I could breathe. Iris understood exactly what he meant. The humiliation of Derek's speech had faded, replaced by something warmer. Something that felt dangerously like hope. Can I confess something? Iris asked as the clock behind the bar ticked past 2 in the morning. Please do. I've spent the last 3 years making myself smaller. Derek hated when I was passionate about things. He said my intensity was exhausting, so I learned to dim myself down. Agreeable, convenient, safe. She met Lucius's gaze. But sitting here with you, I don't feel like I need to be anyone except myself. Lucius reached across the space between them and took her hand. The touch sent electricity up her arm. Then don't be, he said. Be intense. Be passionate. Be everything he was too weak to handle. Her breath caught. You don't even know me. I know you're kind enough to come to an engagement party that would hurt you, just to give someone closure. I know you're strong enough to work 2 jobs and still support your family. I know you see beauty in broken things. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I know that in 3 hours you've made me feel more understood than anyone has in my entire life. The vulnerability in his admission cracked something open in Iris's chest. Here was a billionaire, a man who could have anything he wanted, confessing that he felt as lonely as she did. I'm terrified, she whispered. This feeling, whatever this is, it scares me. Me too. Lucius's grip on her hand tightened. I don't do connections. I don't let people in. But you walked into this bar looking like your world had ended. And somehow you became the best part of my night. We're strangers, Iris protested weakly, even as her heart raced. Are we though? I feel like I've known you longer than people I've worked with for years. He wasn't wrong. The connection between them defied logic. It was as if they'd been waiting their whole lives to find someone who understood the specific shape of their brokenness. What are we doing? Iris asked. I don't know. But I don't want it to stop. Neither did she. God help her. Neither did she. Come upstairs with me, Lucius said. Not a demand. A request. An invitation. Iris knew she should say no. Should thank him for the conversation, go home to her apartment, and forget this night ever happened. That would be the responsible choice. The safe choice. But she'd been responsible and safe her entire life. And where had it gotten her? Publicly humiliated, financially struggling, and utterly alone. Okay, she heard herself say. The penthouse suite was on the 42nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased Manhattan, glittering below them like a galaxy of terrestrial stars. The space was elegant but impersonal, clearly a hotel suite, not a home. I'm staying here until I figure out what to do with my father's estate, Lucius explained. My apartment holds too many memories right now. Iris walked to the windows, pressing her palm against the cool glass. It's beautiful up here, like being suspended between earth and sky. She felt him come up behind her, close enough that his warmth radiated through the space between them. "Iris," he said her name like a prayer. "If you want to leave, I'll call you a car. No judgment, no hard feelings." She turned to face him. His eyes held desire, yes, but also something deeper. Respect, care, the willingness to let her choose. "I don't want to leave," she said. He cupped her face in his hands, giving her every opportunity to change her mind. When she leaned into his touch instead, he kissed her. The kiss was everything, gentle and fierce, desperate and tender. It tasted like whiskey and promises neither of them could guarantee. Iris melted into him, her hands fisting in his expensive shirt, anchoring herself to this moment. They moved through the suite, shedding clothes and inhibitions. Lucius worshipped every inch of her skin like she was precious, irreplaceable. He whispered her name between kisses, asked if she was sure, made certain she knew she could stop this at any moment. But Iris didn't want to stop. For the first time in years, she felt alive, seen, cherished. They made love as the city slept below them, two broken people finding wholeness in each other's arms. It was passionate and real, and absolutely terrifying in its intensity. Afterward, they lay tangled together in sheets that probably cost more than her monthly rent, Lucius tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "Stay," he murmured against her hair. "Don't disappear when morning comes." "I'm not going anywhere," Iris promised, believing it with her whole heart. Iris woke to sunlight streaming through the windows, and Lucius propped on, one elbow, watching her with an expression that made her heart stumble. "Is it creepy that I've been awake for an hour just looking at you?" he asked. She laughed, suddenly self-conscious. Her borrowed dress was somewhere on the living room floor. Her hair was definitely a disaster, and she had no makeup to hide behind. "Maybe a little creepy," she teased. "But I'll allow it." He kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her lips. "I meant what I said last night. I don't want this to end, Lucius. I know it's crazy. I know we just met. But I've never felt this with anyone." He looked almost vulnerable in the morning light. "Tell me you feel it too. Tell me I'm not alone in this." Iris touched his face, feeling the slight stubble on his jaw. "You're not alone. I feel it. I'm just scared of what it means. We'll figure it out together." His smile was genuine, hopeful. "Have breakfast with me. Spend the day with me. Let's see where this goes." It was reckless, impractical. Everything Iris normally wasn't. "Yes," she said anyway. They ordered room service, coffee and croissants and fresh fruit that tasted like luxury. Lucius told her about his plans to restructure his father's company to make it something ethical instead of just profitable. Iris shared her dream of opening a community art center in underprivileged neighborhoods. "I could help with that," Lucius said. "I have the resources." "No," Iris cut him off gently. "When I do it, I need to know I did it myself. But thank you." Instead of being offended, he looked impressed. "You're remarkable. You know that?" "I'm really not. I'm just stubborn. Remarkably stubborn, then." They talked about meeting again that evening, about taking this slow but serious. Lucius had meetings all day but promised to be free by 7. They'd have dinner, somewhere quiet where they could continue getting to know each other. "Give me your number," Lucius said, handing her his phone. Iris entered her contact information, watching him save it with a smile that did dangerous things to her pulse. "Tonight," he promised, kissing her one more time. "Tonight," she agreed. She just stepped into the bathroom to freshen up when her phone, still in her purse from the night before, began vibrating with urgent calls. The first call was from Maya, the second from her mother, the third from a number Iris didn't recognize. Her hands shook as she answered her mother's call. "Iris, thank God. It's Grandma Rose." Iris's grandmother had raised her mother and had been the steady presence in their family even after Iris's father left. She was 86 and lived in a nursing facility upstate that drained most of Iris's mother's savings. "What happened?" Iris gripped the phone tighter. "She had a stroke last night. They took her to the county general. The doctors say..." Her mother's voice broke. "They say we should come now. that it might be, "We should come now." The world tilted. "I'm on my way. I'll catch the first bus to Vermont. There's a problem." Her mother sounded defeated. "The facility is demanding payment before they'll release her medical records to the hospital. We're 3 months behind, and they're threatening to—" "Iris, they're talking about legal action. They want $12,000 by the end of business today, or they're suing us." $12,000. An impossible sum. Iris had maybe 800 in her savings account. "I'll figure something out," Iris said, though she had no idea how. "Just stay with Grandma. Tell her I love her. I'm coming." She ended the call and stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Her grandmother was dying. Her family was about to be sued, and she was in a billionaire's penthouse, wearing last night's underwear, pretending she could have a fairy tale romance. Reality crashed down with brutal force. Lucius was on his laptop when she emerged, probably handling the business empire that waited for no one. He looked up with a smile that faded when he saw her expression. "What's wrong?" "I have to go." Iris grabbed her dress, pulling it on with shaking hands. "Family emergency. I'm sorry. Let me help." He stood immediately. "Whatever it is, I can—" "No." The word came out sharper than she intended. "This isn't your problem. Iris, talk to me." But she couldn't. If she told him about her grandmother, about the money, he'd offer to pay. He probably had $12,000 in his couch cushions. He'd solve her problem with a phone call. And then what? She'd be the charity case. The struggling girl he rescued. Every moment between them would be tainted by the knowledge that she'd needed him to save her. She'd spent 3 years with Derek being made to feel like a burden. She wouldn't start whatever this was with Lucius by being one. "I have to go," she repeated, shoving her feet into her shoes. "Thank you for last night. It was perfect. Then why does this feel like goodbye?" Lucius's voice was strained. "It's not. I just need to handle this alone." She could call him later. Once she'd figured out the money situation. Once she'd dealt with her grandmother's crisis. Once she wasn't standing in his suite feeling like Cinderella after midnight, suddenly aware of the vast gulf between their worlds. "I'll call you," she promised, meaning it. But Lucius's expression suggested he didn't quite believe her. The bus to Vermont didn't leave until noon. Iris sat in the Port Authority terminal, her mind racing through impossible calculations. $12,000. She could ask for an advance at both her jobs, but that would maybe cover $2,000. Maya had student loans and barely made rent. Her mother had nothing. Her phone buzzed. "Lucius, please tell me you're okay. Whatever's happening, I want to help." Guilt twisted in her stomach. She should respond, should explain. But then what? Accept his money? Start this relationship with her hand out? Prove every society gossip right when they inevitably discovered the billionaire was dating a broke nobody? Another text. "Iris, I'm worried. Just let me know you're safe." She typed out 5 different responses and deleted them all. What could she say that wouldn't sound like either a plea for help or a brush? Off. Her mother called again with worse news. Grandma Rose was in surgery. The outcome was uncertain. The nursing facility's lawyer had sent formal paperwork. They had until 5 p.m. Iris stared at her phone, at Lucius's messages, at the abyss of her bank account. Every instinct screamed to call him, to accept help, to not be so stupidly proud when someone's life hung in the balance. But if she did, everything between them would change. She'd be the project, not the partner, the girl he saved, not the woman he chose. She turned off her phone. The bus ride to Vermont took 4 hours. Iris spent every minute hating herself for leaving, for not calling, for being too proud to ask for help. But she spent those same minutes knowing she couldn't build something real with Lucius if it started with her needing his money. By the time she reached the hospital, her grandmother was out of surgery. Stable, but weak. The doctors said she'd need months of rehabilitation, expensive rehabilitation. Iris held her grandmother's fragile hand and made a decision. She'd sell everything she owned, pick up extra shifts, find a 3rd job. She'd figure this out the way she'd figured everything else out, by herself. She didn't turn her phone back on for 3 days. Lucius gave Iris space for exactly 4 hours before worry overtook patience. She'd looked genuinely panicked when she left. What if something terrible had happened? He called. No answer. He texted. Nothing. By evening, when she'd missed their 7 o'clock dinner without a word, concern became alarm. He called again. The phone went straight to voicemail, not ringing, but off completely. Lucius stared at his phone, at her contact information, at the digital evidence, that she existed and wasn't just a dream he'd conjured from loneliness. She'd promised to call. She'd looked him in the eye and promised. But his father had made promises too. His mother had promised to stay, then died. Everyone who mattered eventually left. He wanted to believe Iris was different, that the connection they'd shared was real. But as hours turned into a day, then 2, then 3, belief became harder to maintain. Had he imagined the depth of what they'd shared? Had it meant something different to her? A nice distraction, nothing more. The possibility gutted him more than he wanted to admit. By day 4, Lucius stopped waiting and started searching. He had resources most people didn't: private investigators, connections, the ability to make things happen with a phone call. He used all of them. Iris Noir. I am 28 years old. Junior curator at the Ashford Gallery in Chelsea. Worked part-time at Bella Notte restaurant. I lived in Queens. He went to the gallery first. A woman at the front desk informed him that Iris had requested emergency leave. Family situation. No return date specified. The restaurant told him the same thing. Family emergency. They didn't know when she'd be back. Her apartment building in Queens was a shabby 5-story walk-up with a broken intercom. Lucius stood outside apartment 4C and knocked. No answer. The neighbor, an elderly man with suspicious eyes, said he hadn't seen her in days. Every lead ended the same way, nowhere. His head of security suggested accessing phone records, but Lucius couldn't cross that line. If Iris wanted to disappear, he had to respect that choice, no matter how much it destroyed him. But the not knowing ate at him. Was she safe? Was she in trouble? Has something happened to her family? Or had she simply decided that one night with a stranger wasn't worth? Pursuing and ghosting was easier than having an awkward conversation. That last possibility hurt worst of all. Lucius returned to the Grand Meridian bar where they'd met, as if proximity to that space might somehow bring her back. The same bartender was working. The lady from last week, Lucius said. Did she seem upset when she left? The bartender shrugged. She seemed happy. You both did. Thought for sure you two would. He gestured vaguely. Guess I was wrong. Lucius nursed a scotch and stared at the spot where Iris had sat, where she'd told him about seeing beauty in broken things. Maybe he'd been the broken thing she'd seen beauty in. And maybe, like all broken things, he was better observed from a distance than actually kept. His phone buzzed with another business crisis requiring attention. The reading of his father's will loomed with its impossible marriage clause. His company needed decisions. The world kept turning. But all Lucius could think about was a woman in an emerald dress who'd made him feel less alone, then vanished like she'd never existed at all. Somewhere out there, Iris Noir was dealing with whatever crisis had pulled her away. And he couldn't help her, couldn't find her, couldn't do anything except hope that maybe, someday, she'd come back. The not knowing was its own special torture, but waiting was all he had left. Iris sat on the closed toilet seat in her tiny bathroom, staring at 3 plastic sticks lined up on the edge of the sink. 3 tests, 3 unmistakable pink lines. Pregnant. The word felt foreign, impossible, like something that happened to other people, not to her. Not to the girl who'd always been careful, always been responsible, always done everything right. Except for one night. One perfect, reckless, life-altering night. Her hands trembled as she picked up the first test, as if examining it more closely might change the result. It didn't. The pink line remained stubbornly present, declaring a truth she wasn't ready to face. 6 weeks. It had been 6 weeks since that night at the Grand Meridian. 6 weeks since she'd left Lucius's penthouse and turned off her phone. 6 weeks since she'd made the choice to handle her problems alone. She'd thought the nausea was stress, her grandmother's stroke, the mounting medical bills, the exhaustion of working double shifts to pay off the nursing facility. Those seemed like adequate explanations for feeling perpetually sick. Maya had been the one to suggest the test, eyeing Iris over coffee 3 days ago with a knowing look. "When was your last period?" she'd asked bluntly. Iris had frozen, cup halfway to her lips, mentally counting backward. Then counting again because the number couldn't be right. 7 weeks. Maybe 8. "Oh God," she'd whispered. Maya had dragged her to a drugstore immediately. Now, sitting in her bathroom with the evidence laid out before her, Iris felt the full weight of reality crushing down. She was pregnant, with Lucius Blackwell's baby, a man she'd spent one night with, then disappeared without explanation. A man who probably hated her now. The shock wore off slowly, replaced by waves of fear so intense Iris thought she might be sick again. How was she supposed to do this? She could barely support herself. Her grandmother's medical bills had drained what little savings she'd had. She was behind on rent. Her car had broken down last week, and she couldn't afford to fix it, so she'd been taking 2 buses to get to work. A baby required things, diapers and formula and doctor visits and childcare. A baby required stability she didn't have, resources she couldn't access, a future she hadn't planned. Iris pressed her palms against her still, flat stomach. Somewhere beneath her skin, a tiny cluster of cells was growing. Half her, half Lucius. A person who hadn't asked to be created, who deserved better than a mother, who worked 80-hour weeks and lived paycheck to paycheck. Terror clawed at her throat. She was 28, but felt ancient and impossibly young at the same time. Her own mother had been 32 when Iris was born, married, stable. Even then, her father's abandonment had nearly destroyed them. What chance did Iris have, alone and broke? The practical voice in her head, the one that had kept her surviving through every crisis, whispered that she had options. This didn't have to continue. No one would blame her for choosing differently. But another voice, quieter and more insistent, whispered something else. "This is your child. Yours and Lucius's, the product of the one night you felt truly alive." Iris had never been particularly maternal. She'd never been one of those women who cooed over babies or dreamed of motherhood. Her dreams had been about art, about making something meaningful with her life. Yet, sitting in that cramped bathroom, looking at those 3 positive tests, she felt something unexpected, a fierce, protective surge that had nothing to do with logic. This tiny cluster of cells was hers, and despite the impossibility, despite the terror, despite everything, she wanted it. The realization brought tears she'd been holding back for weeks. She cried for the mess she'd made, for the future she'd never planned, for the man whose child she carried but whose number she deleted in a moment of pride. She cried until she had no tears left, until the fear settled into something manageable, something she could work with. Then she stood up, washed her face, and started making a plan. Before we continue with Iris's journey, I need to pause and ask you something. Here at Mr. Steele Rich Stories, we believe the best stories are the ones that make us think, that challenge us to consider what we do in impossible situations. So, I'm asking you, what would you do if you were Iris? Would you reach out to Lucius and tell him about the pregnancy, even though you disappeared without explanation? Would you try to handle it alone, protecting your independence? Or would you consider other options entirely? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I genuinely want to know what you think. Your perspective matters, and this community thrives on these conversations. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Iris's story is just getting started, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Now, let's get back to our story. That night, Iris lay in bed staring at her water-stained ceiling, thinking about choices and consequences. Her entire life had been shaped by other people's decisions. Her father's choice to leave, Derek's choice to humiliate her publicly, even her grandmother's stroke, a consequence of genetics and age, things beyond anyone's control. But this? This was hers. She'd made the choice to go upstairs with Lucius. She'd made the choice to leave without explanation. And now, she had to make another choice about what came next. There was a certain courage required in accepting consequences, not running from them, not blaming others, but standing in the reality you'd created and figuring out how to move forward. Her mother had taught her that, in the years after her father left, "We can't control what others do," she'd said, working 2 jobs to keep them fed. "But we can control how we respond. We can choose courage over bitterness." Iris had always admired that strength. Now she needed to find it in herself. Being pregnant and alone wasn't ideal. It wasn't what she'd planned or wanted. But it was real, and it required her to be braver than she'd ever been. She thought about the art she loved, the paintings born from suffering, the sculptures carved from broken stone. Beautiful things often came from difficult circumstances, not because the circumstances were good, but because someone had the courage to create despite them. Maybe that's what this was. Not a disaster, but a different kind of creation. The thought didn't make the fear disappear, but it made it bearable. She could do hard things. She'd been doing hard things her whole life. This would just be the hardest one yet. The first trimester was brutal. Morning sickness turned out to be a cruel misnomer. Iris was nauseous all day, every day. The smell of the restaurant's kitchen, where she'd worked for 3 years without issue, suddenly made her gag. She spent her breaks in the bathroom, trying not to vomit, then had to return to the floor with a smile and take orders. At the gallery, she could at least sit at the desk when no patrons were present, but standing for long periods made her dizzy, and the exhaustion was unlike anything she'd experienced. By noon, she felt like she'd run a marathon. By evening, she could barely keep her eyes open. She'd also enrolled in an online art history certification program 6 months ago, trying to make herself more marketable for better positions. The coursework required hours she no longer had, energy that had vanished completely. Iris did homework at 2 in the morning when insomnia struck, fueled by crackers and ginger tea, the only things she could keep down. She wrote essays about Renaissance painters while fighting waves of nausea. She studied for exams between shifts, her textbooks propped open on the bus. Money became an even more pressing concern. She'd need maternity leave eventually, which neither of her jobs officially offered. She'd need prenatal care, which required insurance she barely had. The deductible alone was astronomical. Maya helped when she could, bringing groceries and pretending Iris was doing her a favor by taking the extra food. "I bought too much," she'd lie cheerfully, stocking Iris's nearly empty fridge. "You're helping me not waste it." Iris's mother wanted to help too, but she was drowning in Grandma Rose's medical bills. The stroke had left her grandmother partially paralyzed, requiring intensive rehabilitation. Her mother had taken a second job just to keep up with the costs. "I'm fine, Mom," Iris lied during their weekly phone calls. "Work is good. Everything's good." She couldn't add to her mother's burdens, not when the woman was already sacrificing everything for Grandma Rose. So Iris suffered alone, working through the nausea and exhaustion, hiding the pregnancy, under loose clothing, telling no one at work because she couldn't risk losing either job. At 12 weeks, she finally saw a doctor, a free clinic in the Bronx that didn't ask too many questions. The ultrasound showed a tiny form with a flickering heartbeat, and Iris cried right there on the exam table. Real. This was real. "Everything looks healthy," the doctor said. "But you're underweight, and your blood pressure is concerning. You need to reduce stress." Iris almost laughed. Reduce stress. Sure, she'd just quit one of her jobs and stopped paying rent. Problem solved. But she nodded and accepted the prenatal vitamins she couldn't afford and promised to take better care of herself. The doctor gave her a printout of the ultrasound. Iris stared at it on the bus ride home, at the tiny blob that would become a person. Her person. She taped it to her bathroom mirror, a reminder of why she was doing this. Why did she drag herself out of bed every morning? Why did she keep going when everything hurt? The loneliness was worse than the physical symptoms. Iris had always been independent, comfortable with her own company. But pregnancy was isolating in ways she hadn't anticipated. Other women had partners to share the experience with. Someone to hold their hair back during morning sickness, to come to doctor's appointments, to feel the baby kick for the first time. Iris had an empty apartment and her own reflection. She joined an online support group for single mothers, reading posts from women in similar situations. Their stories were both comforting and terrifying. Some were thriving, building beautiful lives with their children. Others were drowning, barely keeping their heads above water. Which would she? The internal struggle never fully quieted. Part of her mourned the life she'd planned, the career advancement, the financial stability she'd been working toward, the freedom to make choices based on what she wanted rather than what she needed. Another part felt guilty for mourning. Women had babies every day, many in worse circumstances than hers. Who was she to complain? But the guilt didn't erase the grief, and the grief didn't diminish the love she was starting to feel for the life growing inside her. At night, alone in the dark, Iris talked to her stomach, told the baby about her day, about the art she'd seen at the gallery, about the dreams she had for their future. "I'm going to do better for you," she whispered. "I'm going to give you stability. Love. Everything I have." She meant it. Even when she was terrified, even when she didn't know how she'd pay next month's rent, she meant it. The baby became her purpose, her reason to keep fighting when fighting felt impossible. Maya brought up Lucius exactly once. "You need to tell him," she said over tea at Iris's apartment, eyeing the ultrasound picture on the mirror. "He has a right to know he's going to be a father." Iris had been expecting this conversation. "I know. So, are you going to call him?" "I don't have his number anymore. I deleted it." Maya rolled her eyes. "Please. The man is Lucius Blackwell. You could find him in about 30 seconds with a Google search. His office is probably listed." She was right, of course. Finding Lucius wouldn't be difficult. One phone call to Blackwell Industries. One email to his corporate address. He was one of the most prominent businessmen in New York. Accessible in theory, even if not in practice. But Iris couldn't do it. "He thinks I'm someone I'm not," she said quietly. That night at the hotel, I wasn't myself. I was braver, more carefree, someone who could be spontaneous and reckless. "So? That's still you, just a different part." "No." Iris shook her head. "That was one night, one aberration in a life that's defined by struggle and responsibility. If I show up now, pregnant and desperate, what does that look like? It looks like honesty. It looks like I'm after his money." The fear she'd been holding burst free. "Think about it, Maya. I sleep with a billionaire once, disappear for 2 months, then show up pregnant. Every gossip site in the city would have a field day. Gold digger, opportunist, a woman who trapped a rich man with a convenient pregnancy." Maya's expression softened. "Lucius wouldn't think that. Not based on what you've told me about him, wouldn't he? We spent one night together. He doesn't know me. For all he knows, this is exactly the kind of person I am, someone who targets wealthy men and manufactures situations. But it's not manufactured. You're actually pregnant with his child, which makes it look even more suspicious." Iris stood, pacing her small living room. His father just died. He inherited a fortune. There are probably dozens of women trying to get close to him for his money. Why would I be different? Because you are different. Because you didn't ask him for anything. I didn't ask because I ran away before he could offer. That doesn't make me noble. It makes me a coward who's now in an impossible position. Maya was quiet for a long moment. "So what? You're just going to raise this baby alone? Never tell Lucius he has a child?" The question hit hard because Iris didn't have a good answer. She'd been avoiding it, pushing it to some future date when things would be clearer. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe someday when the baby is older, when I'm more stable, when I can prove I'm not after his money, and in the meantime, I do what I've always done. I will survive." Maya looked like she wanted to argue more, but must have seen the exhaustion in Iris's face. She let it go, changing the subject to nursery ideas and baby names. But the question lingered long after Maya left. Was keeping this secret protecting her pride? Or was it denying her child the right to know their father? Iris didn't have an answer. She only knew that the thought of facing Lucius, of seeing disappointment or suspicion or worse, pity in those grey eyes, was more than she could bear. So she didn't search for him, didn't make the call, didn't send the email. She told herself it was the right choice, the only choice, but late at night she wasn't so sure. 3 in the morning became Iris's most honest hour, that liminal space between night and day when the world slept and her defenses crumbled. She'd lie in bed, one hand on her growing stomach, and remember the way Lucius had looked at her in the hotel bar, like she was the only person in the room. The sound of his laugh when she'd made a joke about terrible art. The gentleness in his hands when he'd touched her face, asking if she was sure. "I don't want this to end," he'd said that morning, sunlight streaming through the penthouse windows. And she'd believed him. In that moment, wrapped in expensive sheets with the city sprawling below them, she'd believed they could have something real. Then reality had intruded in the form of her mother's panicked phone call, and Iris had run. She'd chosen survival over vulnerability, independence over trust. Had that been the right choice? She'd thought so at the time. Accepting his money, letting him solve her problems, would have poisoned what they'd shared. She'd needed to prove she could handle her life without a billionaire's intervention. But she hadn't anticipated this consequence, hadn't imagined that their one night together would create a life that bound them together permanently. Now she carried his child, and he had no idea. Somewhere in Manhattan, Lucius Blackwell was probably living his life, running his company, dealing with his father's estate, maybe dating other women who hadn't disappeared from him without explanation. Did he ever think about her? Or had she been a brief distraction, memorable but ultimately forgettable? Not knowing hurts almost as much as loneliness. Sometimes, in those dark hours, Iris drafted messages she'd never send. Apologies and explanations and confessions. She'd type them out on her phone, then delete them before morning came. "I'm sorry I left. I'm sorry I didn't call. I'm sorry I'm carrying your child and too afraid to tell you." Delete. "You made me feel alive for one night, and now I have a piece of you growing inside me." Delete. "I think about you every day. I wonder if you think about me too." Delete. 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 The regret was constant, a background hum to everything else. She regretted leaving, regretted not explaining, regretted that her child would grow up not knowing their father because she was too proud and too scared to make a phone call. But she didn't regret that night. Despite everything, the complications, the fear, the impossible situation, she didn't regret the hours she'd spent with Lucius Blackwell. He'd seen her, really seen her, and for a brief, shining moment, she'd felt like she mattered. That memory sustained her through the difficult days. When the nausea was overwhelming and the bills were piling up and the future looked impossible, she'd remember what it felt like to be cherished, even if it had only lasted one night. 4 months pregnant, Iris stood in front of the bathroom mirror, examining her reflection. The baby bump was undeniable now, a gentle curve that no amount of loose clothing could completely hide. She'd have to tell her boss at the gallery soon, and the restaurant. She couldn't keep hiding this much longer. The thought terrified her. Both jobs could legally fire her. New York had protections, but enforcement was another matter. Small businesses found ways around the rules. But she couldn't control that. Could only control her response. Outside her window, the city hummed with evening life. Somewhere out there, Lucius was living his life, unaware that he was going to be a father. Unaware that the woman he'd spent one night with was struggling to build a future for the child they'd created. Iris placed both hands on her stomach, feeling the tiny flutters that had started a week ago. The baby is moving, a reminder that this was real, happening, unstoppable. "Just you and me," she whispered. "We'll figure it out. We always do." She meant it. Even scared, even alone, she meant it. But Iris had no idea that fate wasn't done with them yet, that the walls she'd built around her secret were about to come crashing down in the most unexpected way, that in just 2 weeks her carefully constructed life would collide spectacularly with the man she'd been running from. that the baby growing inside her was about to change everything for both of them, whether she was ready or not. The universe had plans that didn't care about her fears or her pride or her desperate need for independence. And those plans were already in motion. The contraction started at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in February, 2 weeks before Iris's due date. She'd been dreaming about the ocean, a place she hadn't visited since childhood, when pain ripped through her abdomen with such intensity she gasped awake. Her hands flew to her stomach, feeling the hardness beneath her skin as her body contracted. "Not yet," she whispered to the baby. "I'm not ready yet." But babies didn't care about readiness. By the time Maya arrived to drive her to the hospital, the contractions were 7 minutes apart. Iris gripped the dashboard of Maya's battered Honda, breathing through each wave of pain, while her best friend violated every traffic law getting to Mount Sinai. "You're doing great," Maya kept saying, though her knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "Just breathe. We're almost there." The emergency room was chaotic. A stabbing victim, someone having a heart attack, a child with a broken arm crying for his mother. Iris stood at the intake desk, doubled over with a contraction, waiting for someone to notice her. "How far apart?" a nurse finally asked, appearing with a wheelchair. 5 minutes, Iris managed. Things moved quickly after that. She was whisked to labor and delivery, changed into a hospital gown that barely closed. Over her stomach, hooked up to monitors that beeped with her baby's heartbeat. The OB on call, a tired-looking woman named Dr. Patterson, examined her and delivered news that made Iris's already racing heart stop completely. "You're having twins." The words didn't make sense. "What?" "No, I'm having one baby. The ultrasounds only showed one." The second baby was hiding behind the first. "It happens sometimes, Doctor." Patterson's expression was professional but sympathetic. "You're already 6 centimeters dilated. These babies are coming today, whether we're surprised or not. Twins. 2 babies. Double everything. Double the diapers, double the formula, double the cost." Iris had barely figured out how to afford one child. The panic must have shown on her face because Maya grabbed her hand. "We'll figure it out, one thing at a time. Right now, you just focus on getting these babies here safely." The next 8 hours were a blur of pain, unlike anything Iris had imagined. They'd talked about epidurals in her prenatal class, but Iris's insurance barely covered the birth itself. Pain medication was an extra cost she couldn't justify, so she labored naturally, gripping Maya's hand hard enough to bruise, breathing through. Contractions that felt like her body was being torn apart from the inside. "You're doing so well," the nurses kept saying. But Iris didn't feel like she was doing well. She felt like she was dying. At 12:23 p.m., after 3 hours of pushing, the first baby emerged. A tiny, screaming girl with a shock of dark hair and lungs that could wake the dead. "It's a girl, Doctor," Patterson announced, placing the baby on Iris's chest. Iris looked down at the tiny, furious creature and felt her heart crack open in a way she'd never experienced. Love, instant, overwhelming, terrifying love, flooded through her. "Hi," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Hi, baby girl." She had exactly 4 minutes with her daughter before the next contraction hit and the second baby demanded to be born. The boy came easier, 3 pushes, and he slid into the world at 12:38 p.m. Quieter than his sister, but just as perfect. When they placed him on her chest next to his sister, Iris looked down at both of them and understood, for the first time, what people meant when they said love could break you and heal you simultaneously. 2 babies, 2 perfect, tiny humans who were hers to protect and raise and love. The magnitude of it was crushing. The wonder of it was transcendent. "Do you have names?" a nurse asked, preparing the birth certificates. Iris had picked out one name, Charlotte after her grandmother, but she needed a second name now, and her exhausted brain could barely form thoughts. She looked at her daughter, still screaming her displeasure at being ejected from the womb. Strong-willed already. A fighter. "Sienna," Iris said. "Her name is Sienna Rose." Then she looked at her son, quiet and alert, his eyes, still that newborn blue-gray but already, showing hints of something familiar, gazing at her with what felt like ancient wisdom. Those eyes. She knew those eyes. Felix, she whispered, her throat tight. Felix James. 2 names for 2 miracles. 2 reasons her life would never be the same. From the beginning, the twins were as different as 2 humans could be. Sienna came into the world angry and stayed that way for the first 3 months. She cried when she was hungry, cried when she was tired, cried when she was uncomfortable, and sometimes cried just because she felt like it. She demanded attention with the imperious attitude of a tiny dictator. "This one's going to run the world someday," Maya said during one of Sienna's marathon crying sessions, or at least terrify everyone into submission. But when Sienna smiled, rare at first but increasingly frequent, it lit up her entire face. And when she laughed, which started around 3 months, it was the most joyful sound Iris had ever heard. Sienna approached life with intensity, whether she was furious or delighted. Felix, by contrast, was eerily calm. He rarely cried, watching the world with those observant eyes that grew more grey with each passing month. While Sienna demanded, Felix waited patiently. While Sienna screamed for attention, Felix would simply gaze at whoever was nearby until they noticed him. "He's plotting something," Maya joked. "That's the look of a criminal mastermind in training." But Felix wasn't plotting. He was observing, learning, taking everything in with a quiet intelligence that sometimes unnerved Iris. At 6 months, he'd figured out how to escape his swaddle while Sienna still fought hers like it was a mortal enemy. At 9 months, he was pulling himself up on furniture while Sienna was still perfecting her crawl. They were opposites in almost every way, yet utterly devoted to each other. If you separated them for more than a few minutes, both would fuss until reunited. They slept better together, ate better together, played better together. Watching them, Iris saw pieces of herself, Sienna's determination, Felix's quiet strength. But she also saw Lucius in ways that made her heart ache. Felix had his eyes. As the months passed and the newborn blue faded, it became undeniable. Steel-grey eyes that looked at the world with the same intensity she remembered from that night at the Grand Meridian. And Sienna, despite her dramatic temperament, had Lucius's bone structure emerging. The same strong jaw, the same elegant cheekbones that would probably make her devastating when she grew up. Looking at her children was like looking at a map of that one perfect night. Pieces of her and pieces of him combined into 2 entirely new people. People who deserved to know their father. The thought plagued Iris constantly, but she still couldn't bring herself to make the call. Not yet. Not when she was barely keeping her head above water. The first year was survival in its purest form. Iris returned to work when the twins were 6 weeks old because her unpaid leave was up and rent didn't pay itself. The gallery let her come back part-time, 20 hours a week instead of 40, which meant 20 fewer hours of income. She'd had to quit the restaurant. There was no way to manage evening shifts with infant twins. The loss of that paycheck was devastating, but physics made it impossible to be in 2 places at once. Maya helped when she could, watching the twins during Iris's gallery shifts. But Maya had her own job, her own life. Iris couldn't rely on her for everything. So she found a daycare that accepted state assistance, a cramped facility, in the Bronx that smelled like industrial cleaner and desperation. The workers were kind but overwhelmed, watching too many children in too little space. Iris hated leaving her babies there, but she had no choice. Money was a constant, gnawing anxiety. Formula alone costs nearly $300 a month. Diapers were another $200. The twins grew so fast that clothes fit for maybe 6 weeks before they needed the next size up. Iris shopped at thrift stores, accepted hand-me-downs from Maya's co-workers, and learned to stretch $1 until it screamed. She ate ramen and peanut butter sandwiches so her children could have formula. She kept the heat low in winter and wore sweaters to bed. She hadn't bought herself new clothes in over a year. The exhaustion was unlike anything she'd experienced during pregnancy. Twins meant double the feedings, double the diaper changes, double the midnight wake-ups. For the first 6 months, Iris didn't sleep more than 2 consecutive hours. She'd feed Felix at midnight, get him back to sleep, then Sienna would wake at 1:30. By the time Sienna was down, it was 2:45, and Felix was awake again. The cycle repeated endlessly, night after night, until Iris felt like a zombie moving through a fog. She fell asleep, standing up at the gallery once, jerked awake to find a patron staring at her with concern. "Are you all right?" the woman had asked. "Just tired," Iris had managed. "New baby. How old?" 4 months. "Well, babies. Twins." The woman's eyes had widened with sympathy. "Oh, honey, I remember those days. It gets better, I promise." But when? When did it get better? Because Iris couldn't see the light at the end of this tunnel. She was drowning in responsibility, in sleeplessness, in the constant terror that she wasn't enough, that she'd fail her children the way every adult in her life had eventually failed her. At her lowest point, 3 a.m. on a Wednesday, when both twins were screaming and she'd been awake for 36 hours straight, Iris sat on the floor of the nursery and cried right along with them. "I can't do this," she sobbed. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You deserved better than me." But even as she said it, she was picking up Felix, then Sienna, holding both crying babies, against her chest and rocking them until their screams subsided into whimpers. Then silence. She could do this. She was doing this. Even when it felt impossible, she kept going. Because that's what mothers did. Somewhere around the 8-month mark, something shifted in Iris. She'd been existing in survival mode so long that she hadn't noticed when survival became strength. When fear transformed into fierce determination, it happened gradually, then all at once. The moment she truly became a mother, not just a woman with children, but a warrior who would burn down the world to protect her babies. The catalyst was an incident at the daycare. Iris had arrived to pick up the twins and found Felix with a bruise on his arm. The daycare worker, a young woman named Jessica who usually seemed competent, claimed he'd fallen. "Babies fall," she'd said dismissively. "It's what they do." But the bruise was finger-shaped. Someone had grabbed him. The rage that flooded through Iris was primal. She'd pulled both twins from that daycare immediately, filed a complaint with the state, and spent her rent money enrolling them in a better facility across town. When her landlord threatened eviction for late payment, Iris had looked him in the eye and said, "You'll get your money when I have it. Until then, you can start the legal process, which will take months. Or you can work with me and get paid eventually. Your choice." He'd backed down. Something in her voice, some new steel, had convinced him she wasn't bluffing. That same steel emerged in other areas of her life. At the gallery, when her boss suggested she was distracted because of her children, Iris didn't apologize. She laid out exactly how much work she accomplished in her 20 hours, showed him the new client, relationships she'd built, and asked if he'd like to hire someone else who could do better. He'd given her a raise instead. Small, but something. The scared girl who'd fled Lucius's penthouse was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd birthed 2 humans, kept them alive through impossible circumstances, and discovered reserves of strength she hadn't known existed. Motherhood had forged her into someone new, someone harder but also more compassionate, someone who understood suffering but refused to be defeated by it. She was still terrified most of the time, still struggled with money and exhaustion and the constant juggling act of single parenthood. But beneath the fear was bedrock, an unshakable certainty that she would protect her children no matter the cost. That fierce love made everything else bearable. The hardest lesson Iris learned was that independence and isolation weren't the same thing. She'd spent her whole life refusing help, equating self-sufficiency with strength. Asking for assistance felt like admitting defeat, like proving she was exactly as weak as people assumed. But watching her children grow, seeing how Sienna and Felix relied on each other, taught her something crucial. Humans weren't meant to do everything alone. It started small, letting Maya babysit without feeling guilty, accepting her mother's offer to send hand-me-down baby clothes from Grandma Rose's church community, joining a single mother's support group and actually participating instead of just lurking. Then it grew bigger, applying for WIC benefits even though it felt like admitting failure, using the food bank when money was especially tight, letting her neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen who adored the twins, watch them for an hour so Iris could take a shower without rushing. Each instance of accepting help felt like chipping away at armor she'd worn for protection. It was uncomfortable, vulnerable, sometimes humiliating, but it was also survival, and survival meant doing whatever it took. The support group was particularly transformative. Sitting in that church basement every Wednesday night, listening to other single mothers share their struggles, Iris realized she wasn't alone in her failures or fears. "I fed my kid cereal for dinner 3 nights in a row because I was too tired to cook," one woman confessed. "I let mine watch 4 hours of TV yesterday so I could sleep," another admitted. "I cried in the grocery store because I couldn't afford both diapers and vegetables," a third said. Each confession was met with nods of understanding, not judgment. These women got it. They understood the impossible math of single parenthood, the constant trade-offs between needs, the exhaustion that went bone deep. Iris started sharing too, talking about her fears, her regrets, the father her children didn't know. The women listened without advice or criticism, just witnessed her pain and reflected it back with empathy. "You're doing the best you can with what you have," one woman told her after a particularly emotional meeting. "That's all any of us can do. And it's enough. You're enough." The words broke something open in Iris's chest. She'd been measuring herself against impossible standards, comparing her reality to other people's curated lives and finding herself perpetually lacking. But maybe enough didn't mean perfect. Maybe it just meant showing up every day and trying. Learning to ask for help didn't make Iris weak. It made her wise. Strong enough to admit she couldn't do everything alone. Brave enough to accept that vulnerability wasn't the same as failure. It was one of the greatest gifts her children gave her, teaching her that needing people was human, not shameful. Sienna and Felix taught Iris more about life than any book or experience ever had. Sienna taught her about joy. The toddler approached every day with enthusiasm that was exhausting but also infectious. She squealed with delight at pigeons. She danced to music only she could hear. She found wonder in puddles and leaves and her own reflection. Watching Sienna, Iris remembered what it felt like to be delighted by small things. She started noticing beauty again, the way morning light filtered through their apartment window, the sound of her children's laughter, the simple pleasure of a warm cup of tea. Sienna also taught her about persistence. When the little girl wanted something, she didn't give up. She'd try to reach a toy on a high shelf 50 different ways before accepting defeat. She'd practice new words until she got them right. She approached obstacles with the absolute certainty that she'd eventually overcome them. That same persistence started showing up in Iris's life. When the gallery cut her hours, she didn't despair. She applied for grants to fund independent art projects. When money was tight, she found creative solutions instead of just panicking. She channeled Sienna's refusal to accept limitations. Felix, meanwhile, taught her about observation and patience. He'd study things for long minutes, a toy, a book, his own hands, with intense concentration. While Sienna charged ahead, Felix waited and planned. Iris learned to slow down, to notice details she'd been missing in her constant rush. She started really looking at her children instead of just managing them. She saw how Felix comforted Sienna when she was upset, how Sienna made Felix laugh when he was serious. Felix also taught her about quiet strength. He didn't demand attention, but his presence was constant and steady. He was the anchor, while Sienna was the storm. Both children taught her about unconditional love. They didn't care that their apartment was tiny, or that Iris couldn't afford fancy toys. They didn't judge her for feeding them frozen vegetables or dressing them in thrift store clothes. They loved her completely, unreservedly, just for being their mother. That love was transformative. It made Iris want to be better, not perfect, but better, more patient, more present, more willing to forgive herself when she fell short. The twins also taught her about resilience. They fell down constantly while learning to walk and simply got back up. They approached each day fresh, unburdened by yesterday's frustrations. Iris tried to adopt the same attitude. Yes, Yesterday was hard. Yes, tomorrow might be harder. But today was its own thing, full of small moments that mattered more than the big struggles. Her children were her greatest teachers, showing her daily what really mattered: connection, presence, love. Everything else was just details. 3 years passed in a blur of milestones and mundane moments that somehow added up to a life. The twins turned 1, then 2, then 3. Sienna grew into a whirlwind of energy and opinions, a tiny person who knew exactly what she wanted and wasn't shy about demanding it. Felix remained thoughtful and observant, speaking less than his sister, but saying profound things when he did talk. "Why is the sky up there?" he asked one day, pointing above them. "Because that's where it is," Iris had responded, distracted. "But why isn't it down here with us?" The question made her stop and actually think. Felix had a way of doing that, asking things that seemed simple but weren't. Iris's career evolved slowly but steadily. She'd completed her certification program, studying during nap times and after the twins went to bed. The qualification led to a senior curator position at the Ashford Gallery, more responsibility but better pay and actual benefits. She could afford a slightly bigger apartment in a slightly better neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but the heat worked consistently and the landlord actually fixed things when they broke. The twins had their own room instead of sharing her bedroom. Small victories that felt monumental. Money was still tight, but not desperate. Iris had learned to budget ruthlessly, to save when she could, to find free activities for the children. Museums on free days, parks in good weather, the library's storytime program. Her mother visited twice a year, always bringing gifts and offers to help that Iris mostly refused but appreciated. Grandma Rose had recovered enough to video chat with the twins weekly and hearing. Their great-grandmother's voice made Sienna and Felix giggle with delight. Maya remained a constant presence. The twins called her Auntie Maya and considered her family. She'd been there for every birthday, every milestone, every crisis. Iris didn't know how she would have survived without her. The support group continued to be a lifeline. Some women had moved on, situations improving or partners entering the picture. New women joined, fresh to the struggles. Iris now navigated with hard-won experience. She'd become one of the veterans, the one who could offer advice and reassurance to newcomers. "It gets easier," she'd tell them. The same words she'd once heard. Not easy, but easier. And it was true. 3 years in, Iris had found a rhythm. Not perfect, not without challenges, but manageable. She was good at her job. Her children were healthy and happy. She had people who cared about her. She'd built a life from nothing, and while it wasn't the life she'd imagined at 28, it was hers. Hard-won and precious. The one shadow that never fully lifted was the secret she carried. Felix's grey eyes grew more like Lucius's every day. Sometimes Iris would catch him in a certain expression, serious, contemplative, and feel like she was looking at his father. Guilt gnawed at her. The twins deserved to know where they came from, who they came from. Lucius deserved to know he had children. But 3 years felt like too long. How did you call someone after 3 years and say, "Remember that night"? Surprise, you're a father to twins you've never met. The longer she waited, the more impossible it became. So she kept waiting, kept putting it off, kept telling herself she'd figure it out eventually. Felix's 3rd birthday party was at the park, a small gathering with Maya, a few kids from daycare, and sheet cake from the grocery store. Iris watched her son blow out his candles with that serious expression he always wore when concentrating. His eyes, unmistakably steel grey now, reflected the sunlight. Lucius's eyes. Every time Iris looked at her son, she saw the man she'd spent one night with 3 years ago. Felix had his father's bone structure too, though softened by baby fat. The same strong jaw emerged, the same way of observing before acting. Sienna, meanwhile, had inherited Lucius's charisma. When she smiled, people melted. She had a way of commanding attention without trying, of making everyone around her feel like they were the most important person in the room. She also had his stubbornness. When Sienna decided something, changing her mind required an act of Congress. No pink dress. she'd declared that morning. "I want the blue one." "The blue one is dirty, sweetheart. How about the yellow one?" "Blue." They'd compromised on purple, which took 20 minutes of negotiation that would have impressed a UN diplomat. Watching her children, Iris saw a family tree written on their faces, her features mixed with his, creating something entirely new but undeniably connected to both of them. Maya noticed too. "Felix looks more like his father every day," she'd commented quietly while the kids played. "I know. You're going to have to tell Lucius eventually." "I know that too. So when?" Iris watched Felix share his cake with Sienna, the two of them giggling together. "I don't know. How do you drop that bomb on someone?" "Hi, remember me? Here are the children you didn't know existed." By being honest. By giving him the choice to be in their lives. What if he doesn't want to be? What if he's moved on, married someone else, has other kids? The fears she'd been harboring spilled out. What if I introduce the twins to their father, only to have him reject them? What if he doesn't? What if he's been wondering about you for 3 years? What if he wants to know his children? Iris didn't have an answer. Only fear and guilt, and the terrible knowledge that she'd let this go on too long. The call came on a Wednesday in April. "Is this Iris Noir?" A crisp, professional voice. Speaking. "This is Catherine Wells from Meridian Gallery. Your application for senior curator came across my desk. I'd like to schedule an interview." Iris's heart stopped. Meridian Gallery was one of the most prestigious galleries in Manhattan. She'd applied on a whim, never expecting to hear back. "Yes," she managed. "Absolutely." When? The interview was scheduled for the following week. Iris spent every spare moment preparing, researching the gallery's history and current exhibitions, rehearsing answers to likely questions. Maya watched the twins during the interview. Iris wore her one good suit, bought second-hand but tailored to fit, and tried to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. Catherine Wells was in her 50s, elegant and intimidating. She spent an hour grilling Iris about her experience, her vision for contemporary art curation, her thoughts on accessibility in galleries. Iris answered honestly, drawing on her years of experience and the passion that had never died despite the struggles. "You have an impressive background given your circumstances," Catherine said. "Single mother to twins, working your way up from entry-level positions. That shows tenacity. It shows stubbornness," Iris replied. "I'm too stubborn to give up on things I care about." Catherine smiled. "Good. This position requires someone who can handle pressure. The Meridian Gallery's spring exhibition is our most important event of the year. It attracts donors, collectors, and media attention. We need someone who can manage that without falling apart. I've kept 2 3-year-olds alive and thriving while working full-time," Iris said. "I can handle pressure." 2 days later, Catherine called with an offer. Better salary than Iris had ever earned. Real benefits. The chance to curate major exhibitions and work with renowned artists. It was everything she'd been working toward for years. "There's one condition," Catherine added. "Our spring exhibition is in 6 weeks. You'd need to start immediately and hit the ground running. The exhibition is already planned, but our previous curator left unexpectedly. Can you handle that timeline? 6 weeks to prove herself at the most important gallery she'd ever worked for. Terrifying. Impossible." "Yes," Iris said without hesitation. "I can do it." She started the following Monday, diving into exhibition plans and donor, relationships, and a level of responsibility she'd only dreamed about. The spring exhibition was titled Metamorphosis, Transformation Through Adversity. Artists who'd created beauty from struggle, who'd turned pain into something meaningful. Iris understood that theme intimately. She'd been living it for 3 years. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have anticipated, was that the Meridian Gallery's primary benefactor, the man who'd funded this entire exhibition and would be attending the opening gala, was Lucius Blackwell. The universe was about to force the reunion she'd been avoiding for 3 years. And Iris had absolutely no idea it was coming. The Meridian Gallery had been transformed into something magical. Soft lighting illuminated the carefully curated pieces, sculptures that seemed to defy gravity, paintings that captured moments of human transformation, installations that invited contemplation. Iris had spent 6 weeks bringing this vision to life, and seeing it complete made every sleepless night worth it. She'd arrived 3 hours early, dressed in a simple black dress that Maya had insisted she buy new for the occasion. "You're the senior curator now," her best friend had said firmly. "You need to look the part." The dress was elegant without being flashy, professional but feminine, with clean lines that made Iris feel confident. She'd even splurged on heels that didn't pinch her toes and gotten her hair professionally styled for the first time in years. Tonight mattered. The Meridian Gallery's spring exhibition attracted Manhattan's elite, collectors, critics, journalists, donors whose contributions funded the arts. Catherine had made it clear that Iris's performance tonight would determine her future at the gallery. "The primary benefactor is particularly important," Catherine had mentioned during their final preparation meeting. "Blackwell Industries has been our largest donor for 5 years. Mr. Blackwell rarely attends these events, but he's making an exception tonight. Make sure you connect with him personally." Iris had nodded, adding schmooze with Blackwell guy to her mental checklist without giving it much thought. Manhattan was full of wealthy benefactors with similar surnames. The coincidence hadn't even registered. Now, as guests began arriving, women in designer gowns, men in tailored suits, the air filled. With expensive perfume and champagne, Iris moved through the crowd with practiced grace. She discussed the artist's techniques, explained the exhibition's theme, guided important patrons toward pieces they might want to acquire. She was good at this. The scared girl who'd once felt like an imposter at Derek's engagement party was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd earned her position through skill and determination. "Iris, darling, the collection is magnificent," declared Mrs. Hartford, a prominent collector who'd been skeptical about the gallery hiring someone so young. "That installation in the East Wing, absolutely breathtaking. Thank you. The artist is here tonight if you'd like to meet her. I would love that. You have such an eye for talent." The compliment warmed Iris more than the champagne she'd been nursing. This was what she'd worked for. Recognition, respect, the chance to elevate artists whose work deserved attention. Catherine appeared at her elbow, elegant in silver silk. "Iris, a moment?" They stepped aside, and Catherine's expression was pleased. "You're doing wonderfully. The patrons are impressed. The press is taking notes, and we've already had 3 serious acquisition inquiries." "Well done. Thank you. I just want to do justice to the artist's work." "You are. Now, one more thing. Mr. Blackwell just arrived. He's in the main gallery examining the centerpiece installation. This would be an excellent time to introduce yourself." Iris's stomach fluttered with nerves. Meeting major donors always made her anxious. Of course. What should I know about him? Brilliant but intense. He inherited Blackwell Industries 3 years ago and has transformed it into one of the most ethically run corporations in the country. 35, unmarried, notoriously private, Catherine paused. "And generous with the arts. Keeping him happy keeps this gallery funded." "Understood. I'll introduce myself now." Iris made her way through the crowd toward the main gallery, mentally rehearsing her introduction. Professional, appreciative, knowledgeable about his contributions to the arts. The main gallery was less crowded. Guests had clustered in the smaller rooms where the champagne flowed more freely. Only a handful of people stood before the centerpiece. Installation, a stunning sculpture titled Phoenix Rising that represented transformation through destruction. A man stood alone before the piece, his back to her, tall, broad-shouldered, in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit. Something about his posture, the way he held himself, the angle of his head, sent recognition trickling down Iris's spine. No, it couldn't be. She took another step closer, her heels clicking on the polished floor. The man turned. Time stopped. Steel grey eyes met hers across 15 feet of gallery space, and Iris felt the earth tilt beneath her. Lucius Blackwell, the man from the Grand Meridian Hotel, the man whose children, she'd been raising for 3 years, the man she'd run from and thought about every single day since. He looked older, not physically, He was still devastatingly handsome, still had that presence that commanded attention, but there was something harder in his expression, something weathered. 3 years had left their mark on him too. For a moment, neither of them moved. They simply stared at each other across the gallery like the rest of the world had ceased to exist. Iris watched emotions flicker across his face, shock, recognition, something. That might have been joy, then something that was definitely anger. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might escape her chest. Her carefully rehearsed introduction evaporated. She couldn't remember her own name, let alone how to make professional small talk. Iris. Her name on his lips was rough, like he hadn't said it aloud in years, but had thought it countless times. Lucius. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. He crossed the distance between them in 5 long strides, stopping just close enough that she could smell his cologne, the same scent she remembered from that night, cedar and something darker. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before, the slight shadows beneath them that suggested too many sleepless nights, the tension in his jaw that spoke of anger barely contained. "You work here," he said, "not a question." "I'm the senior curator. I just started 6 weeks ago." 6 weeks. His laugh was hollow. "I've been funding this gallery for 5 years, attending maybe one event annually. Of course you'd be here the one time I decide to show up." The universe's sense of humor was cruel. People were starting to notice them. 2 people standing too close, staring at each other with too much intensity. This wasn't professional. This wasn't appropriate. Iris should step back, should introduce herself properly, should pretend they were strangers meeting for the first time. But she couldn't move, couldn't look away, couldn't do anything but stand there drowning in grey eyes that haunted her children's faces. "We should talk," Lucius said quietly. "Somewhere private." Every instinct screamed at her to run, to make an excuse about her professional obligations and disappear into the crowd, to protect herself from the confrontation she'd been avoiding for 3 years. But she'd done enough running. "Okay," Iris said. They found privacy in Catherine's office, a small space on the 2nd floor, away from the gala's noise and prying eyes. Lucius closed the door behind them, and suddenly the room felt impossibly small. He stood with his back to the door, hands in his pockets, that controlled exterior barely masking the storm beneath. 3 years, he said finally. "You vanished for 3 years. I know. You left." The words were accusation and pain combined. "You woke up in my penthouse, said you had a family emergency, promised to call, and then you disappeared like you'd never existed." Iris wrapped her arms around herself, a defensive posture she couldn't help. "I'm sorry." "You're sorry?" He laughed bitterly. "Do you have any idea what that did to me? I searched for you, Iris, for months. I went to the gallery where you worked. They said you'd taken emergency leave. I went to your apartment. Your neighbor said you'd left town. I hired investigators who found nothing because you'd turned off your phone and apparently gone off the grid." The pain in his voice was a physical blow. She'd known leaving had been cruel, but hearing it laid out like this, hearing what her choices had cost him, made shame burn through her. "I thought you were dead," Lucius continued, his voice cracking slightly. "I genuinely thought that something terrible had happened to you, that the emergency had been catastrophic, and you were just gone." "Lucius." Then, after months of searching, I had to accept a different possibility, that you were alive and well and had simply decided I wasn't worth a phone call, that whatever we'd shared that night meant nothing to you. "That's not true." The words burst out of her. "It meant everything." "Then why?" He moved closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "Why did you leave? Why didn't you call? Why did you let me think you were dead or didn't care?" The hurt in his eyes was unbearable. Iris had spent 3 years telling herself she'd made the right choice, that keeping her distance had been necessary. But faced with the damage she'd caused, the justifications felt hollow. "I was scared," she whispered. "Of what?" "Of me. Of this," she gestured between them. "Of what you made me feel. Of needing someone and having them leave like everyone always leaves. Lucius was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer but no less intense. "So you left first, before I could—" "Yes." The admission cost her, but it was true. "I left before you could figure out I wasn't worth staying for." The words hung between them, raw and honest. Iris felt exposed in a way she hadn't since that night 3 years ago when she'd let her walls down completely. "My grandmother had a stroke," she continued, needing him to understand, even if he couldn't forgive. "That morning when I left, my mother called. Grandma Rose was dying. They needed money for treatment. Everything was falling apart. And I was in your penthouse wearing last night's dress, pretending I could be someone I'm not." "What do you mean, someone you're not?" "Someone who belongs in penthouses. Someone who fits into your world. Someone who doesn't have to work 2 jobs to keep the lights on." The truth poured out. "I'm not sophisticated, Lucius. I'm not elegant or polished or any of the things women in your life probably are. I'm barely keeping my head above water on a good day. You think I care about that?" He looked genuinely baffled. "You think any of that matters?" It mattered to Derek. It mattered to every person who's ever looked at me and seen someone small and struggling and not worth their time. "I'm not, Derek." Lucius's voice was hard. "I'm not whoever else hurt you. I looked at you and saw someone brilliant and strong and absolutely worth knowing. I still do." The conviction in his words made her throat tight. "You barely know me. Whose fault is that?" The anger was back, but underneath it was something more vulnerable. "I wanted to know you, Iris. I wanted to take you to dinner and learn everything about you. I wanted to see if what we felt that night could become something real, but you didn't give me that chance. I was terrified of being a burden," she said quietly. "If you fix my problems with money and make me feel like a charity case, of starting something that was already unequal because I needed you more than you needed me. So you made the decision for both of us, decided I couldn't handle your real life, so you cut me out completely." Iris flinched at the accuracy. "Yes, that wasn't fair. I know. I was 28 and panicking, and I made a terrible choice." She met his eyes. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just need you to understand why." Lucius ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. "I looked for you because that night mattered to me. You mattered to me, and then you were just gone. Do you know how that feels? To find something real and lose it before you can even name it?" "Yes," Iris whispered. "I know exactly how that feels." Because she'd lost it too. She'd walked away from the best night of her life and spent 3 years wondering what might have been if she'd been braver. The silence stretched between them, heavy with words unsaid and years lost. They stood 3 feet apart in Catherine's office, and the space felt like both a chasm and nothing at all. Iris could feel the pull between them, that same magnetic connection that had drawn them together in the hotel bar. 3 years hadn't diminished it. If anything, it had grown stronger, sharpened by absence and longing. "I thought about you," Lucius said quietly. "More than I should have, more than was healthy. I'd be in meetings and remember something you said about art being resilient. I'd pass the Grand Meridian and think about that night. I'd see emerald green, and my heart would stop thinking it might be you." The confession undid her. "Lucius, I dated other women," he continued. "I tried to move on, tried to convince myself you were just a memory I'd built up into something more than it was. But none of them were you. None of them made me feel what you made me feel in a few hours." Iris's eyes stung with tears she refused to let fall. "I thought about you too. Every day. I convinced myself you'd moved on, forgotten me, that I was just another woman who'd passed through your life. You were never that." He took a step closer, closing the distance. "You were the woman who saw me when I was broken and didn't try to fix me, who understood loss and transformation, who made me feel less alone. You made me feel that too." They were inches apart now, close enough that Iris could see the flecks of darker grey in his eyes, close enough to touch if she was brave enough to reach out. The air between them crackled with tension, anger and hurt and desire all tangled together. 3 years of longing condensed into this moment, this space, this impossible reunion. "I want to hate you for leaving," Lucius said roughly. For putting me through months of agony wondering if you were alive, for not trusting me enough to let me help. You should hate me." Iris's voice broke. "I would hate me, but I can't." His hand came up, almost touching her face before dropping. "I've tried. God knows I've tried. But you're standing here looking at me like you're drowning, and all I want to do is pull you under with me." The rawness in his voice matched the chaos in her heart. She wanted to close the distance, wanted to feel his arms around her again, wanted to pretend the last 3 years hadn't happened and they were still two strangers finding solace in each other. But they weren't strangers anymore. They were two people with history and hurt and a secret that Iris was still carrying. "Tell him," her conscience screamed. "Tell him about the twins. Tell him now." But before she could form the words, Lucius's phone buzzed violently in his pocket. Lucius ignored the phone, his eyes never leaving Iris's face. It buzzed again, then again, insistent. "You should get that," Iris said, grateful for the interruption even as she mourned it. "It can wait. It sounds urgent." He pulled out the phone with obvious reluctance, glanced at the screen, and swore under his breath. "My assistant. She wouldn't call during an event unless—" he answered. "This better be critical." Iris watched his expression shift from irritation to serious focus. "When? How bad?" "No, don't wait for me. Get Martinez on the line and offer 20% above their asking price. I don't care if it's excessive. We need this deal closed." A pause. "I'll be on the next flight. Have the jet ready in 2 hours." He ended the call and looked at Iris with frustration and regret. "There's a crisis with a merger in Tokyo. I have to go." Of course he did. The universe's timing was impeccable. "I understand." Iris stepped back, putting professional distance between them. "Thank you for attending the exhibition." "Don't." Lucius caught her wrist, gently but firmly. "Don't retreat into formal pleasantries. Not after—" he gestured at the space between them. "Not after this. What do you want me to say?" "I want you to promise you won't disappear again." His grip on her wrist tightened slightly. "I want you to look me in the eye and swear that when I come back from Tokyo, you'll still be here." The intensity in his gaze made it impossible to look away. "I'll be here. I work here now. I'm not going anywhere." "That's not what I'm asking." He pulled her closer. "I'm asking if you'll talk to me. Really talk. About what happened 3 years ago. About why you're looking at me like you're terrified. About what the hell we're supposed to do with this. The connection is still crackling between them. The unfinished business. The possibility of something more. Yes," Iris heard herself say. "I'll talk to you. Before we continue, I need to take a quick moment. If you're loving this story, if your heart is racing, wondering what's going to happen when Iris tells Lucius about the twins, do me a favor and hit that like button right now. It helps Mr. Steele Rich Stories reach more people who appreciate these deep, emotional love stories. And if you're already thinking about sharing this with a friend who loves romance, go ahead and do that too. Stories like this are meant to be shared, discussed, and experienced together. All right, back to Iris and Lucius. Because things are about to get even more complicated. Lucius released her wrist but didn't step away. "I'll be in Tokyo for 3 days, maybe 4. When you get back, we'll talk. I promise." He studied her face like he was memorizing it, like he was afraid she might vanish if he looked away. "Can I have your number, or are you going to make me hire another investigator to find you?" The attempt at humor didn't quite mask the real fear beneath it. He genuinely thought she might run again. Iris pulled out her phone with shaking hands and recited her number. Lucius entered it immediately and called her so she'd have his. "Don't block me," he said. "Don't ignore my calls. Don't convince yourself that running is easier than facing this." "I won't." She meant it. She was done running. "Lucius, tell me when I get back." His thumb brushed across her knuckles, a touch so brief it might have been accidental, but felt entirely deliberate. "Whatever you need to say, tell me when I can actually stay and listen." He was giving her time. Time to figure out how to confess that she'd been raising his children for 3 years. Time to prepare for the conversation that would change everything. Time she desperately needed, but also dreaded. Safe flight, Iris managed. Lucius looked like he wanted to say more, but his phone buzzed again. Another urgent message. 3 days, 4 at most. Then we finished this conversation. He left, and Iris stood alone in Catherine's office, her heart pounding and her mind racing. Through the door, she could hear the gallery gala continuing, guests laughing, champagne, glasses clicking, the successful exhibition celebrating transformation through adversity. The irony wasn't lost on her. She pulled out her phone and stared at Lucius's contact information, a direct line to the man whose children were probably asleep right now at Maya's apartment, unaware that their entire world was about to change. Iris made it through the rest of the gala on autopilot. She smiled at patrons, discussed acquisitions, and accepted compliments on the exhibition's success. Catherine was thrilled. They'd exceeded fundraising goals, secured commitments from major collectors, and received praise from every influential critic in attendance. "You were brilliant tonight," Catherine said as the last guests departed. Mr. Blackwell seemed particularly impressed. "I saw you two talking. Did you make a good connection?" If she only knew. "Yes," Iris said carefully. "We connected. Excellent." Maintaining that relationship is crucial for the gallery's future. Relationship. The word felt loaded with meaning Catherine couldn't possibly understand. Iris left the gallery near midnight, exhausted and emotionally wrung out. She picked up the twins from Maya's apartment, both sleeping soundly, Sienna clutching her stuffed elephant, and Felix curled around his favorite blanket. "How did it go?" Maya whispered, helping transfer the sleeping children to Iris's car. "The exhibition was a success." "That's not what I'm asking. You look like you've seen a ghost." "I saw Lucius." Maya's eyes widened. "Lucius Blackwell." "You're Lucius." "He's not my Lucius." "But yes, he's the gallery's primary benefactor. He was at the gala." "Holy Iris. What did you say? Did you tell him about the twins?" "No. There wasn't time. He had an emergency in Tokyo. He'll be back in a few days. And then? And then I tell him he has 3-year-old twins he's never met." Iris's laugh was slightly hysterical. That should go well. She drove home through empty streets, the twins sleeping in the back seat, and tried to prepare for a conversation that felt impossible to navigate. Her phone buzzed at a red light. A text from Lucius made it to the airport. "I meant what I said. Don't disappear. We need to talk about what this is." What this was. A question Iris had been avoiding for 3 years. Another text arrived before she could respond. "Have dinner with me when I get back. Let me take you somewhere we can talk without interruptions." Dinner. Like a date. Like they were normal people with a normal history instead of 2 strangers who'd created life together and then spent 3 years apart. Iris typed and deleted 5 responses before settling on, "Okay. Text me when you're back in the city." His response came immediately, "I will. Sleep well, Iris." She wouldn't sleep well. She'd lie awake staring at her ceiling, trying to find words for the impossible truth she had to share. But she typed back, "You too." At home, Iris carried the sleeping twins to their room and watched them settle into their beds. Sienna immediately sprawled across her mattress, limbs akimbo like a starfish. Felix curled tight, his face peaceful in sleep. Her babies, her entire world. In 3 days, she'd tell their father they existed. The terror of that reality made her knees weak. She sat on the floor between their beds, back against the wall, and let herself feel everything she'd been suppressing all night. Fear, overwhelming, paralyzing fear. What if Lucius was furious? What if he accused her of trapping him? What if he thought she'd hidden the twins deliberately to come back later with demands? Worse, what if he wanted nothing to do with them? What if he took one look at Sienna and Felix and decided fatherhood wasn't for him? She couldn't bear the thought of her children being rejected. They were perfect, precious, deserving of a father who would love them unconditionally. But she also couldn't keep lying, couldn't keep this secret while trying to build something real with Lucius. The internal battle raged. Part of her wanted to run again, to quit the gallery, move to a different city, protect her children from the potential pain of their father's rejection. But running had cost her 3 years already. Running had hurt Lucius and deprived her children of their father and trapped her in a prison of her own making. She was done running. Iris looked at Felix's face, so like his father's, at Sienna's expressive features that reminded her of Lucius in unguarded moments. These children deserved to know where they came from, deserved the chance to have a father if he was willing to be one. And Lucius deserved the truth, deserved the choice she'd denied him 3 years ago. Whatever happened next, anger, rejection, complicated legal battles over custody, she'd face it, because the alternative was continuing to live in fear, and fear had already stolen too much. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Lucius, sent from somewhere over the Pacific. I spent 3 years thinking you were the one that got away. Now I have a chance to find out if what we felt was real. Don't take that from me again. The message broke something open in her chest. He still wanted this, still wanted her. Despite the hurt, despite the years lost, he was willing to try. She owed him honesty. She owed her children the possibility of a father. She owed herself the courage to stop hiding. Iris looked at her sleeping twins and made a promise. When he gets back, I'll tell him everything. I'll tell him about you both, and whatever happens after that, we'll face it together. Sienna stirred in her sleep, murmuring something unintelligible. Felix's hand reached out unconsciously, finding his sisters across the space between their beds. Even in sleep, they looked out for each other. That same fierce love would guide Iris through the conversation she'd been dreading. 3 days. She had 3 days to find the words that would change all of their lives forever. 3 days until Lucius Blackwell discovered he was a father. 3 days until the secret she'd been carrying came crashing into the open. The waiting would be agony. But the truth, finally, terrifyingly, was coming. And there was no running from it this time. Iris didn't sleep that night, or the next, or the one after that. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through 1,000 different versions of the conversation she needed to have. Each imagined scenario ended differently, some with Lucius understanding, others with him walking away, a few with lawyers and custody battles that made her stomach churn. The twins sensed her anxiety. Children always did. "Mama sad?" Felix asked on the second morning, his small hand patting her cheek as she made breakfast. "Mama's just tired, sweetheart." "Why are you tired?" Sienna demanded, never one to accept simple answers. "Because I'm about to tell your father you exist, and I'm terrified of how he'll react. Because I spent 3 years hiding you from him, and now I have to face the consequences. Because everything is about to change." "Just grown-up stuff," Iris said instead, kissing both their foreheads. "Nothing for you to worry about." But she was worried enough for all of them. Maya came over on the 3rd night, finding Iris surrounded by photographs of the twins spread across the coffee table. Birth pictures, first smiles, first steps, birthdays, random moments of joy captured on her phone and printed at the drugstore. "You're really doing this," Maya said, settling on the couch beside her. "I have to. I should have done it 3 years ago. You were scared. You were protecting yourself and them. I was being a coward." Iris picked up a photo of Felix at 6 months, his grey eyes already unmistakably his father's. "Look at him, Maya. He looks exactly like Lucius. And Sienna has his expressions, his mannerisms. They deserve to know their father, and he deserves to know them. What if he's angry? Then he's angry. I can't control his reaction. I can only control finally telling the truth." Maya squeezed her hand. "You're braver than you think." Iris didn't feel brave. She felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to jump and hoping there was water below instead of rocks. Lucius's texts came daily from Tokyo, updates about the merger, complaints about jet lag, messages that felt almost normal despite the weight of what remained unsaid. And day 3, and I'm ready to come home. Tokyo is exhausting. The merger closed. Heading to the airport in an hour, and landing at JFK at 6 a.m. your time. Dinner tomorrow night? I made reservations at Le Bernardin. Le Bernardin, one of the most exclusive restaurants in Manhattan, the kind of place Iris had only read about in magazines. She texted back, "Can we go somewhere quieter? I need to talk to you about something important." His response came quickly, "That sounds ominous." Changed reservation to a small French place in the village. More private. 7 p.m. tomorrow. Perfect. I'll meet you there. But Iris, whatever you need to tell me, it'll be okay. We'll figure it out. If only he knew what he was promising. The morning of the dinner, Iris woke with absolute clarity. No more wavering, no more second guessing. Today she would tell Lucius the truth, and whatever came after would come. She spent the morning with the twins at the park, memorizing their laughter as they played on the swings. Felix's careful approach to the slide, testing each step. Sienna's fearless leap into the sandbox, announcing to everyone that she was building a castle. "These are my babies," another mother said, pointing to her own children. "Twins, too. How old are yours?" "3. I just turned 3 in February. Mine is 18 months. Does it get easier?" Iris watched Felix help Sienna climb the ladder to the slide, his small hand steadying her. Different. Not easier, just different. But it was worth it. Every impossible day is worth it. The woman smiled. "They're lucky to have you." Iris's throat tightened. But were they lucky? She'd given them everything she had, but she'd also deprived them of their father. That wasn't luck. That was a choice she'd made out of fear and pride. Back at the apartment, she went through the photographs again, selecting the most important ones. The ultrasound from 12 weeks. The twins in the hospital, minutes old. First smile. First birthday. Second birthday. My third birthday was just last month. She organized them chronologically in a folder, a visual timeline of the lives Lucius had missed. Evidence that these children were his. Proof that she wasn't lying or trying to trap him. Maya arrived at 5 to watch the twins during dinner. "You look terrified," she observed. "I am terrified. But you're doing it anyway. That's courage, Iris, or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing." Maya pulled her into a hug. "Whatever happens, you're doing the right thing. These babies deserve to know their dad, and he deserves to know them." Iris changed clothes 3 times before settling on a simple navy dress. Professional enough to feel armored, soft enough to not seem cold. She twisted her hair up, then let it down, then up again. "Mama." "Pretty," Sienna declared, watching from the bed. "Where is Mama going?" Felix asked. "Mama has to talk to someone about something very important." "What is important?" "How did you explain to a 3-year-old that you were about to tell a stranger he was their father?" "You didn't. You kissed their foreheads and promised you'd be back soon and hoped. You weren't about to destroy the fragile stability you'd built." "I love you both so much," Iris whispered, holding them close. "Remember that, okay? No matter what happens, Mama loves you." "Love you too, Mama," they chorused, already distracted by the tablet Maya had brought. Iris left before her courage failed, the folder of photographs clutched against her chest like a shield. The restaurant was tucked away on a quiet street in the West Village, the kind of place locals loved and tourists never found. Small, maybe 15 tables, with exposed brick walls and soft candlelight that made everything feel warm and intimate. Lucius was already there, seated at a corner table that offered privacy. He stood when he saw her, and Iris's breath caught the way it always did when she looked at him. 3 days in Tokyo hadn't diminished his effect on her. If anything, absence had sharpened it. "You came," he said, like he genuinely worried she might not. "I promised I would." He pulled out her chair, waited until she was seated before taking his own seat across from her. The table was small enough that their knees almost touched beneath it. "You look beautiful," Lucius said, "but terrified. Should I be worried about whatever you need to tell me?" Iris set the folder on the table between them, her hands shaking slightly. "I don't know how to do this. I've practiced 1,000 different ways to say it, and none of them feel right. Just say it. Whatever it is, just tell me. I need you to promise you'll let me explain everything before you react." His expression grew serious. "Iris, you're scaring me. Promise me, Lucius." "Okay, I promise." I'll listen to everything before I respond. Iris took a deep breath, gathering courage from some reserve she didn't know she possessed. That night at the Grand Meridian, when I left your penthouse, I wasn't just running from my grandmother's medical crisis. What else were you running from? The possibility of needing you, of falling for you and having you leave, of being vulnerable and getting hurt. She met his eyes. I was terrified of what you made me feel, so I ran, and I convinced myself it was the right choice. We've established that. His voice was gentle. I'm not happy about it, but I understand fear. There's more. Her fingers touched the edge of the folder. About 6 weeks after that night, I discovered I was pregnant. The words hung in the air between them. Iris watched Lucius process them and saw the moment comprehension dawned. Pregnant, he repeated slowly. Yes, with my child, children, twins, a boy and a girl. Her voice broke. You have 3-year-old twins, Lucius, Felix and Sienna, and I've been raising them alone because I was too scared and too proud to tell you. Silence. Complete, devastating silence. Lucius stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. His face had gone pale, his hands gripping the edge of the table. Twins, he finally said. 3 years old. Yes, I have children. Children who are 3 years old. Children I've never met. The pain in his voice was a knife to her heart. Yes. Why? The single word carried the weight of 3 years of questions. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was terrified you'd think I was after your money. Because I was ashamed that I couldn't support them on my own. Because the longer I waited, the more impossible it became to reach out. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Because I'm a coward who made terrible choices out of fear, and I'm so sorry. Lucius's hands shook as he reached for the folder. May I? Iris nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. He opened it slowly, carefully, like it contained something precious and fragile. The first photograph was the ultrasound, 12 weeks, 2 tiny forms visible on the grainy image. Lucius's breath caught. The next photo was from the hospital. 2 newborns, impossibly tiny, swaddled in standard issue hospital blankets. The card listed their weights, their lengths, their times of birth. Pour Sienna Rose Noire, 5 lbs 3 ounces, 18 inches, 1223 p. Emeranda. And Felix James Noir, 5 lbs 7 ounces, 19 inches, 12:38 p.m. Binbinentet. Lucius touched the photo with trembling fingers. They were so small, premature by 2 weeks, but healthy, perfect. He turned to the next photo. Iris in the hospital bed, exhausted and radiant, holding both babies. Then, close to ups of each twin, Sienna mid, cry, her face scrunched in displeasure. Felix calm and alert, his eyes already that distinctive grey. He has my eyes, Lucius whispered. Yes, from the beginning, even when they were that newborn blue, grey. I could see you in him. More photos. 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. First smiles, first time sitting up, first teeth. The twins together, always together, looking at each other with obvious devotion. 1-year-old. A birthday cake. Sienna's face covered in frosting. Felix watching her with amusement. 2 years old. At the park, on swings, building with blocks. 3 years old. Their most recent birthday, a small celebration with a store, bought cake and homemade decorations. Lucius went through every photo slowly, studying each one like he was trying to memorize 3 years of moments in minutes. They're beautiful, he said, his voice rough with emotion. They're absolutely beautiful. They are. Iris wiped at her tears. They're smart and funny and exhausting and perfect. Sienna is fierce and dramatic and demands the world's attention. Felix is quiet and observant and so thoughtful it sometimes scares me. Lucius looked up from the photos, his eyes bright with unshed tears. I'm a father. I'm a father, Lucius repeated, like testing the words. I have children. 2 children. Twins. The shock on his face was transforming into something else, disbelief, giving way to wonder, anger softening into something more complex. For 3 years, I've been a father and didn't know it. He looked back at the photos, at Felix's grey eyes and Sienna's joyful expression. I missed everything. Their births, their first words, their first steps. Everything. I know. I'm so sorry. Let me finish. His voice was strained but controlled. I missed 3 years because you decided I didn't deserve to know. You made that choice for me, for them, for all of us. Yes. That's not okay, Iris. That's not something I can just forgive because you're sorry. The words hit like physical blows, but she'd expected them. Deserved them. I know, she said quietly. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know the truth. Lucius was quiet for a long moment, looking at a photo of the twins together. Maybe 18 months old, Felix's arm around Sienna, both of them grinning at the camera. What are they like? He asked suddenly. Tell me about them. Tell me everything. The request surprised her. She'd expected anger, accusations, maybe threats of lawyers. Not this. Not genuine interest. Not a desire to know them. You want to know about them? They're my children. His voice broke slightly. I've missed 3 years. Don't make me miss another minute. Tell me about my son and daughter. So Iris told him. She told him about the pregnancy, the shock of discovering twins, the difficult first trimester, the exhaustion and fear and determination to give them the best life she could. She told him about their births, 8 hours of labor, Sienna arriving first and announcing her presence with screams, Felix following quietly behind, how holding them both for the first time had felt like her heart was too full to fit in her chest. I named Felix after my grandfather, she explained, and Sienna after, I just liked the name. It felt right for her, strong but beautiful. They're perfect names, Lucius said softly. She told him about their first year, the sleepless nights, the constant feedings, the terror of being responsible for 2 tiny humans, about Sienna's colic that lasted 4 months, about Felix's ability to sleep through anything, about the first time they'd smiled at her and made every difficult moment worth it. Their first word was Mama, Iris said, smiling through tears. Well, Sienna's was. She said it at 9 months and hasn't stopped talking since. Felix waited for 10 months, and his first word was actually Sienna. He said her name before he said mine. Lucius smiled at that, the first genuine smile since she dropped this revelation on him. They're close, inseparable. If you separate them for more than a few minutes, they both get anxious. They share everything. Toys, food, space. Felix is protective of Sienna, and she's fiercely loyal to him. They balance each other. She told him about their personalities emerging. Sienna's dramatic flair, her love of music and dancing, the way she approached life with enthusiasm that exhausted everyone around her. She's going to be a force, Iris said. She already knows what she wants and isn't afraid to demand it. She's stubborn and brilliant, and so full of joy it's contagious. She sounds like you, Lucius observed. That determination, that refusal to accept limitations, maybe. But she has your charisma. People are drawn to her. She lights up a room. Then she told him about Felix. His quiet intelligence, his love of building things, the way he'd spend an hour carefully stacking blocks into increasingly complex structures. He's patient in a way most 3-year-olds aren't, Iris explained. He watches, he learns, he thinks before acting. He's gentle and kind, and so emotionally intelligent, it sometimes catches me off guard. If Sienna's upset, Felix is the one who comforts her. If another kid at daycare is crying, Felix brings them his favorite toy. He has a good heart, the best heart. They both do. Iris pulled out her phone. I have videos. Do you want to see them? Yes. The word was immediate, desperate. Please. Iris pulled up the first video, just from last week. Felix at their apartment, surrounded by wooden blocks, carefully constructing what looked like a castle. See how deliberate he is, Iris narrated softly. Each block is placed exactly where he wants it. He's been building things since he could sit up. Towers, bridges, entire cities on our living room floor. In the video, Sienna appeared, dancing around Felix's construction. What are you making, Felix? Castle, her brother replied, not looking up from his work. For me? For both of us. The simple exchange made Lucius's eyes shine with tears. They sound like you. Their voices. They do. Sienna never stops talking. Felix is more selective, but when he speaks, it's usually something profound. The next video was Sienna's latest masterpiece, dancing in the living room to music from a kids' show, completely uninhibited. She spun and jumped and moved with absolute confidence, narrating her own performance. I'm a princess. No, a superhero. No, a princess superhero. Felix could be heard off camera. You're just Sienna. I'm amazing, Sienna. Lucius laughed, a sound caught between joy and grief. She really is fierce. She knows she's amazing and wants everyone else to know it too. Iris scrolled to another video. This one's my favorite. The video showed both twins at bedtime, cuddled together in Felix's bed, even though they each had their own. Sienna was chattering about her day, while Felix listened with patient attention. And then Mama made pancakes, but they were burnt, but I ate them anyway because I'm brave. Felix, are you listening? I'm listening. Good. Because you're my best friend, and best friends. Listen, you're my best friend too, Felix said seriously. I know. We're best friends forever and ever and ever. The video ended with both of them giggling, already half asleep. Lucius set the phone down carefully, his hands trembling. They're incredible. They are. They're the best thing I've ever done, even though I did everything wrong getting there. For the next hour, they sat in that quiet French restaurant, while Iris shared 3 years of memories. The time Sienna convinced Felix they could fly, and they both jumped off the couch, resulting in Iris' first trip to the emergency room for a suspected broken wrist that turned out to be just bruised. The time Felix learned about sharing and gave away half his Halloween candy to kids who hadn't gone trick-or-treating. The time Sienna decided she wanted to be a doctor and spent 2 weeks putting bandages on everything, furniture, toys, Maya, a very patient neighbor's cat. Every story Lucius absorbed with an intensity that was almost painful to watch. He laughed at the funny moments, looked stricken at the challenges Iris had, faced alone, asked questions about details she hadn't thought to include. What's Felix's favorite food? Peanut butter sandwiches, specifically cut into triangles. Squares are unacceptable. What about Sienna? Anything she can eat with her hands. She's not big on utensils, too slow. Do they sleep through the night now? Mostly. Sienna still has occasional nightmares. Felix sleeps like the dead once he's out. What do they call Maya? Auntie Maya. She's been there since the beginning. They adore her. Each answer painted a picture of lives Lucius had missed, children he'd never met, but was clearly already falling in love with through stories and photographs. I want to meet them, he said finally. I want to be part of their lives. Relief flooded through Iris so intensely she felt dizzy. You do? They're my children, Iris. Of course I want to meet them. I want to know them. I want, his voice caught. I want to be their father, if you'll let me. There are things we need to figure out, Lucius continued, his voice steadier now. Legal things, custody arrangements, how we're going to co-parent children we've been raising separately. I know. I'll agree to whatever you think is fair. DNA test, legal agreements, whatever you need. I don't need a DNA test. He gestured to the photos, to Felix's grey eyes staring out from multiple pictures. I can see myself in them. But yes, we'll need legal arrangements. Not because I don't trust you, but because they deserve that security. Iris nodded, grateful he was being practical even as her heart raced. But I need you to understand something, Lucius said, leaning forward. Whatever happens between us, whether we figure out how to be together or decide, we're better apart. My relationship with Felix and Sienna is separate from that. They're my children. I'm going to be their father. That's not conditional on anything else. I understand. I'm angry, Iris. I'm furious that you kept this from me for 3 years. That anger isn't going away quickly. His eyes held hers. But I'm also grateful. Grateful you finally told me. Grateful you raised them to be these incredible little humans. Grateful that despite everything I missed, I still have a chance to be part of their lives going forward. The complexity of his emotions was written on his face. Hurt and hope tangled together, anger and affection existing simultaneously. I will spend the rest of my life making this up to you, Iris said. To you and to them. I don't know how, but I will. You can start by letting me be involved. Really involved. Not occasional visits or photographs. I want to be their father in every sense of the word. Okay. The word was agreement and surrender. We'll figure it out together. Together, Lucius echoed. That's going to take some getting used to. But for them, I'll figure out how to work with you. For them. Not for her. Not for whatever remained of that night 3 years ago. For the children they'd created and who deserved both their parents. It wasn't the romantic reunion Iris had sometimes imagined in her weakest moments. But it was real, honest, and focused on what actually mattered. The twins would know their father. That was what counted. They ordered food, neither of them really ate, continuing to talk through logistics. When could he meet the twins? How would they introduce him? What kind of schedule could they work out? I want to do this right, Lucius said. I don't want to overwhelm them or confuse them. They're 3. How do you explain to 3-year-olds that the stranger showing up is their father? Carefully, honestly. Kids are more resilient than we think. Iris had been researching this obsessively for the past 3 days. We introduce you as Mama's friend first. Let them get comfortable. Then, when the time is right, we tell them the truth in a language they can understand. You've thought about this. I've thought about nothing else for 3 days. Lucius was quiet for a moment, studying her face in the candlelight. Can I ask you something personal? After everything I just told you, I don't think there's anything more personal left. The night we met. What we felt. Was that real for you, or was I just a distraction from a bad evening? The question surprised her. It was real. Terrifyingly real. That's why I ran, and now, 3 years later, sitting here with all this between us, what do you feel? Iris's heart hammered. Honesty had brought her this far. It would have to carry her the rest of the way. I never stopped wanting you, she admitted. I convinced myself I had. Told myself it was just one night, just chemistry, just a moment that didn't mean anything lasting. But I was lying to myself. Lucius's expression was unreadable. Go on. Every time I looked at Felix's eyes or heard Sienna laugh, I thought about you. I wondered where you were, if you ever thought about me, if you'd moved on and found someone who didn't run away. The words tumbled out. I told myself I was protecting everyone by staying away, but really I was just protecting myself from the possibility of caring about someone and losing them. You didn't lose me. You left. I know. And I've regretted it every day for 3 years. Lucius reached across the table, his hand covering hers. The touch sent electricity through her, just like it had that first night. I never stopped wanting you either, he said quietly. I tried. God knows I tried. Told myself you were just a memory, just a woman I'd spent a few hours with. But you stayed with me, Iris. In every quiet moment, every time I felt alone, I thought about you. Lucius, I don't know what this is. He gestured between them. I don't know if we can build something real from one perfect night and 3 years of separation and the massive complication of children. We're just learning to co-parent. Neither do I. But I'd like to try, not for the twins, though they're obviously the priority, but for us, to see if what we felt was real or just a beautiful moment that can't survive reality. Hope bloomed in Iris's chest, fragile but persistent. You want to try, even after everything? I'm still angry. I'm still processing. I'm probably going to say things I regret and make mistakes because I'm learning to be a father on the fly. He squeezed her hand. But yes, I want to try. If you do, I do. More than anything, they sat there holding hands across the table, 2 people with a complicated past and an uncertain future, bound together by children they'd created in one perfect night. It wasn't simple. It wouldn't be easy. But it was real. And real, Iris was learning and was worth fighting for. When can I meet them? Lucius asked. Whenever you're ready. Tomorrow if you want. Tomorrow. He smiled, tentative but genuine. I'd like that. Tomorrow, Lucius Blackwell would meet his children for the first time. Tomorrow, everything will change. But tonight, in a small French restaurant in the village, two people who'd spent 3 years apart took the first step toward building something together. It was the beginning. Messy, complicated, but theirs. And that was enough. Iris didn't sleep that night either, but this time it was different. Not fear keeping her awake, but anticipation. Tomorrow, Lucius will meet his children. Tomorrow, her carefully constructed world would expand to include him. She spent the morning cleaning the apartment, not that it was particularly dirty, but she needed to do something with her nervous energy. She changed the twins' clothes 3 times before settling on simple jeans and their favorite shirts. Felix's had a dinosaur on it. Sienna's was bright purple with sparkles. Why are you changing us again, Mama? Sienna demanded, hands on her hips in a pose of pure exasperation. Because we have a special visitor coming today. Who? This was it. The conversation Iris had been dreading and preparing for in equal measure. She sat down on the couch and pulled both twins close. Remember how I told you that every person has a mama and a daddy? Yes, Felix said seriously. But we just have you. That's what I thought too. But it turns out, you do have a daddy. He just didn't know about you until now. Sienna's eyes widened. We have a daddy? Yes, sweetheart. His name is Lucius, and he's very excited to meet you both. Where was he? Felix asked, his logical mind already working through the implications. He was far away, and I made a mistake by not telling him about you sooner. But now he knows, and he wants to be part of your lives. What's he like? Sienna asked, ever practical. He's kind and smart. He works very hard. And Felix, you look a lot like him. You have his eyes. Felix touched his own face thoughtfully. My eyes. Your beautiful grey eyes came from your daddy. The twins processed this information with the remarkable adaptability of 3-year-olds. No anger, no resentment that he'd been absent, just simple acceptance that their world was expanding. When will we meet him? Sienna demanded. This afternoon. He's coming here to your home, where you feel safe and comfortable. What if we don't like him? Felix asked quietly. Iris pulled him closer. Then we figure that out together. But I think you will like him, and I know he already loves you both very much. How would he love us if he never met us? Ever the skeptic, Sienna asked the hard questions. Because you're his children. And sometimes love happens even before you meet someone. Like how I loved you both before you were born. That seemed to satisfy them, for now. At noon, Maya came over to provide moral support. She found Iris pacing the apartment while the twins played with blocks, oblivious to their mother's anxiety. You're going to wear a hole in the floor, Maya observed. I'm terrified. What if they don't like him? What if he says something wrong? What if Felix shuts down or Sienna gets overwhelmed? Then you handle it. The same way you've handled everything else. Maya caught Iris's hands, stopping her pacing. You've been brave before. Be brave now. I don't feel brave. Brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing even when you're terrified. The words resonated. Iris looked at her children, playing peacefully, about to have their lives changed forever. I spent 3 years avoiding this because I was scared, Iris said quietly. Scared of being judged, scared of losing control, scared of needing someone. But my fear hurt everyone. Lucius, the twins, even me. So, what changed? I realized that being a good mother doesn't mean doing everything alone. It means doing what's best for my children, even when it's hard. Even when it scares me. Iris squared her shoulders. Felix and Sienna deserve a father. Lucius deserves to know his children. My fear doesn't get to decide that for them anymore. That's the bravest thing I've ever heard you say. Iris knelt down next to the twins. Can I tell you both something important? They stopped playing, giving her their full attention. Felix's quiet focus, Sienna's vibrant interest. Sometimes grown-ups have to do things that scare them, Iris said. Like today. I'm scared about you meeting your daddy, because I want everything to be perfect and I know it might not be. Why are you scared, Mama? Felix asked, his small hand finding hers. Because I love you both so much and I want you to be happy. And change can be scary, even when it's a good change. Being brave means doing scary things, Sienna announced with the absolute certainty of a 3-year-old who'd clearly been listening to too many children's programs. Exactly. Being brave means doing the right thing even when you're scared. And telling your daddy about you, letting him into our lives, that's the right thing, even though it scares me. We can be brave together, Felix said seriously. Iris pulled them both into a fierce hug. Yes, we can be brave together. The doorbell rang at exactly 2 o'clock. Iris opened the door to find Lucius standing in her hallway, looking more nervous than she'd ever seen him. He wore jeans and a simple navy sweater, clearly making an effort to seem approachable rather than intimidating. In his hands were 2 wrapped presents. "Hi," he said, his voice slightly unsteady. "Hi, come in." He stepped into the small apartment, and Iris saw him taking in the modest space. So different from his penthouse. The thrift store furniture, the toys scattered across the floor, the children's artwork taped to the walls. This was her life, unvarnished and real. The twins stood in the living room, Felix slightly in front of Sienna in his usual protective stance, watching this stranger with curious eyes. Lucius stopped a few feet away, giving them space. For a long moment, everyone just stared. Then Felix tilted his head, studying Lucius with that intense focus he inherited from his father. "You look like me," Felix said finally, his voice matter of fact. Lucius's breath caught. "I do? Your eyes, they're the same as mine." Felix walked closer, fearless in his observation. "Mama said I have your eyes." "You do." Lucius knelt down to be at Felix's level. "You have my eyes, and I think you have my nose too." Felix touched his own nose thoughtfully. "This nose? That exact nose? I like my nose," Felix decided. "So that's good." Lucius laughed, a sound caught between joy and tears. "I like your nose too. It's a very good nose." Sienna had been watching this exchange with narrowed eyes, taking her time to assess before committing. "Mama says you're our daddy," Sienna announced, hands on her hips. "I am," Lucius confirmed. "Where have you been?" Direct, as always. Iris started to intervene, but Lucius held up a hand, indicating he wanted to answer. "I didn't know you existed," he said honestly. "Your mama and I met for one night, and then we lost each other. I didn't know she was having babies. But now I know, and I'm here." Sienna considered this. "You gonna stay?" "Yes. I'm not going anywhere. Promise?" The word hung heavy. Lucius met Iris's eyes briefly, then looked back at Sienna with absolute seriousness. "I promise. I'm your daddy, and daddies don't leave their children." "Not ever." Sienna studied him for another long moment, then apparently reached a decision. "Okay, you can stay. But if you're our daddy, you have to play with us." "I would love to play with you. I like to dance and paint and jump and sing." Sienna began listing her favorite activities at rapid speed. "And I'm very good at everything. Felix likes blocks and books and quiet stuff. We're very different, but we're best friends." "I can see that," Lucius said, smiling. "You complement each other." "What's a compliment?" "It means you make each other better. You balance each other out." "Oh, yeah, we do that." Sienna grabbed his hand with the casual confidence of a child who'd decided someone was acceptable. "Come see my paintings. They're on the wall, and they're very beautiful." Lucius let himself be pulled toward the kitchen, where Iris had indeed taped Sienna's latest artistic creations to the wall. "This one is a princess," Sienna narrated. "And this one is a dragon. And this one is a princess riding a dragon, because girls can do anything." "They absolutely can," Lucius agreed. "These are wonderful, Sienna." Felix had followed them, still observing quietly. Iris watched her son study his father, taking in every detail with that careful attention he gave to things that mattered. "Do you like building?" Felix asked finally. I do. I build buildings for my job. Very big buildings. I build with blocks. Want to help? The invitation was offered shyly but with hope. Lucius's eyes grew bright. I would love to help you build. Within 20 minutes, Lucius Blackwell, CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation, one of the most powerful men in New York, was sitting on Iris's living room floor surrounded by wooden blocks while Felix explained his architectural vision. The tower has to be exactly this tall, Felix said, demonstrating. And the base has to be wide or it falls down. That's good structural thinking, Lucius praised. Do you want to make it taller? Yes. But we need more blocks. Then we'll build a solid foundation and work our way up. Always start with a strong base. Iris watched from the kitchen, her heart so full it physically hurt. This was her son, serious, thoughtful Felix, engaging with his father over shared interests. No awkwardness, no hesitation. Just two builders collaborating on a project. Meanwhile, Sienna had dragged out the art supplies. You paint too, she informed Lucius. Not a request, a demand. I'm not very good at painting, Lucius admitted. That's okay. I'll teach you. Sienna sets up paper and paints with the efficiency of a tiny drill sergeant. First, you pick colors. What's your favorite color? Blue, I think. Good choice. Blue is pretty. Now you paint whatever you feel. What do you feel? Lucius asked. Sienna considered it seriously. I feel happy. So I'm painting happily. She proceeded to cover her paper in bright, chaotic swirls of color. Lucius attempted something that might have been a house, or possibly a very abstract tree. Sienna watched critically. It's not very good, she announced. But it's okay. You just need practice. I'll help you get better. Thank you, Sienna. I appreciate that. You're welcome. That's what daughters do. They help their daddies. The casual way she said daddy made Lucius's hand shake slightly. He set down the paintbrush and looked at both children, Felix building beside him, Sienna painting with absolute confidence. Can I tell you both something? He asked. They stopped what they were doing, giving him their attention. I know I haven't been here before today, and I know that's confusing and maybe not fair, but I want you to know that I'm here now and I'm not leaving. You're the most amazing, wonderful children I've ever met, and I'm so lucky to be your daddy. Felix processed this with his usual thoughtfulness. Do we call you Daddy? You can call me whatever feels comfortable. Daddy, Dad, Lucius, whatever you want. I'm calling you Daddy, Sienna declared. Because that's what you are. Felix nodded slowly. Daddy works. Just like that. With the simple acceptance of children, Lucius became their father. I need to pause here for a moment because I'm getting emotional. And I know. Many of you watching this on Mr. Steele Rich Stories are feeling it too. This moment, when Lucius met his children for the first time and they just accepted him. It's beautiful and heartbreaking and perfect all at once. If you're crying right now, you're not alone. Drop a heart in the comments below so we can share this moment together. And if you haven't already subscribed to Mr. Steele Rich Stories, hit that button now because this family's journey is just beginning and you're going to want to see where it goes. Alright. Let's get back to the story, because there's still so much more to tell. The first visit lasted 3 hours. When Lucius finally left, both twins hugged him goodbye. Sienna enthusiastically, Felix more reserved but genuine. You'll come back? Felix asked. Tomorrow, if you want me to. Yes, come back tomorrow. And he did. And the day after that, and the day after that. Over the following weeks and months, a family slowly formed from broken pieces. Lucius came to the apartment every day after work, still wearing his suit, and immediately got down on the floor to play. He learned that Sienna's favorite game was fashion show, where she tried on every outfit she owned and demanded opinions. He discovered that Felix needed quiet time after daycare to decompress from social interaction. He attended Sienna's dance recital, a chaotic performance where she forgot the choreography halfway through and improvised with full confidence. He sat through Felix's block presentation, where his son explained in serious detail the engineering behind his latest creation. On weekends they went to parks and museums. Lucius discovered the joy of pushing swings and the terror of losing sight of them in a crowded playground. He learned to pack extra clothes because Sienna would inevitably find a puddle to jump in. He mastered the art of cutting sandwiches into Felix's required triangles. Iris watched this family form, trying to give Lucius space to bond with the twins while also being present. It was a delicate balance, letting go of sole control while learning to share parenting duties. Maya documented everything with her phone, capturing moments that would become precious. Lucius asleep on the couch with both twins draped across him. Felix teaches his father how to build a proper tower. Sienna painted Lucius's nails bright pink because daddies can wear pretty colors too. The legal arrangements were handled professionally. DNA tests confirmed what everyone already knew: custody. Agreements were drawn up giving them joint custody with Iris as primary physical custodian for now. Lucius set up trust funds for both children, started college savings, arranged for better health insurance. He did all of this without making Iris feel like charity. "They're my children," he said when she tried to protest. "Let me provide for them. Not because you can't, but because I can, and I want to." Learning to accept his help was harder than Iris expected, but watching her children thrive, seeing Felix's face light up when Daddy arrived, hearing Sienna's constant chatter about what they'd do with him next, made it worth the discomfort. But it wasn't all perfect moments and heartwarming bonding. The first real conflict came 6 weeks in, over discipline. Sienna had thrown a spectacular tantrum in the grocery store, screaming, crying, refusing to leave because Iris wouldn't buy the sugary cereal she wanted. Iris had handled it with practiced patience, calmly explaining the rules and eventually carrying a still protesting Sienna to the car. Lucius had witnessed this and later suggested maybe they should consider her feelings more. "Consider her feelings?" Iris had repeated, trying to keep her voice level. "I do consider her feelings, but I'm also her parent, not her friend. Sometimes the answer is no. I just think there's room for negotiation." "Lucius, you've been a father for 6 weeks. I've been doing this for 3 years. Trust me when I say that negotiating with a 3-year-old over sugar cereal is a losing battle." The words had come out sharper than intended. Lucius's expression had shuttered. "You're right. I don't have 3 years of experience. I have 6 weeks because I wasn't told I had children." The old hurt surfaced. "But I'm trying to learn, and shutting down my suggestions doesn't help." They'd had to step away from that conversation and come back to it later, both calmer. "I'm sorry," Iris had said. "I'm used to making all the decisions alone. Learning to share that is hard. And I'm sorry for implying you don't consider their feelings. I can see you're an incredible mother. I just want to be a good father. And I don't always know how." They'd worked out a compromise. Iris would try to be more open to his input, and Lucius would defer to her experience while he was still learning. But similar conflicts arose regularly. Lucius wanted to buy the twins everything: toys, clothes, experiences. Iris worried about spoiling them, about them losing appreciation for what they had. "They don't need a $5,000 playhouse," she'd argued. "I want to give them things I can afford, things that will make them happy." Things don't make kids happy. Presence makes kids happy. Love makes kids happy. "Can't I provide both?" They'd compromised again. Some gifts were fine but within reason. And experiences together mattered more than expensive toys. Different worlds colliding meant different expectations, different values, different approaches to parenting. Learning to blend them required constant communication and willingness to meet in the middle. 3 months in, Lucius showed up at the apartment on a Saturday morning looking exhausted. "Felix called me last night," he said, "around midnight." "From your phone?" Iris's eyes widened. "What? I didn't—" "Oh God. Did he wake you?" "He was crying, said he had a nightmare about monsters and needed me." Lucius's expression was soft, despite the exhaustion. "I talked to him for 20 minutes until he fell back asleep. Then I couldn't sleep because I kept thinking about how scared he'd sounded. I'm so sorry. He must have grabbed my phone when I fell asleep reading to them. I didn't realize." "Don't apologize." Lucius cut her off. "He called me. When he was scared, He thought of me. Do you know what that means? Iris's throat tightened. It means he trusts you. It means I'm actually his father, not just biologically, not just legally. He considers me someone who can make him feel safe. Lucius's eyes were bright. That's everything. Moments like that, small breakthroughs that meant the world, accumulated over time. Sienna's first "I love you, Daddy" happened spontaneously while Lucius was braiding her hair, a skill he'd learned from YouTube videos. She just announced it factly, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Lucius had frozen, hands still in her hair, tears streaming down his face. "I love you too, Sienna. So much." "I know. Can you finish my braid? We're going to be late for the dance." The casual way she'd moved on, love acknowledged and immediately back to practical. Concerns were so perfectly Sienna that Lucius had laughed through his tears. Felix's expression of love was quieter. He'd started holding Lucius's hand automatically when they walked anywhere. He'd save his best block creations to show his father. He'd started saying "we" when talking about his family. "We went to the park. We had pancakes. We're building a castle." That casual "we" that included Lucius marked a fundamental shift. They weren't just individuals spending time together. They were a family. 4 months after meeting his children, Lucius sat in a board meeting that would have consumed his entire focus 6 months ago. They were discussing a merger worth hundreds of millions of dollars. His phone buzzed. A text from Iris with a photo, both twins covered head to toe in finger paint, grinning wildly. The message: the art project went rogue. Send help or whine. Lucius smiled at his phone, completely losing track of what his CFO was saying. "Mr. Blackwell, your thoughts on the Tokyo expansion?" He looked up at the 12 executives waiting for his input. A year ago, this meeting would have been the most important thing in his world. Business was everything, success measured in dollars and market share. Now he was thinking about how Felix's birthday was next week, and he needed to finalize the party plans. About how Sienna needed new shoes because she'd grown out of her current ones. About how Iris had looked this morning when he dropped off coffee, exhausted, but beautiful, wearing his old NYU sweatshirt she'd stolen weeks ago. "The expansion is fine," Lucius said, making a decision. "Martinez can handle the details. I trust his judgment." His executives looked shocked. Lucius Blackwell, notorious for micromanaging every detail, was delegating. "I'm implementing new policies effective immediately," Lucius continued. "No meetings after 5 p.m. No weekend calls unless it's a genuine emergency. And I'll be working from home 2 days a week going forward." "Sir, that's highly unusual. I have priorities outside this office." "You all should too." He stood, gathering his papers. "I built this company to matter, to make a difference. But I've learned recently that the most important things I'll ever build aren't buildings or business deals. They're relationships, family, moments that matter more than any merger." He left the meeting 15 minutes early to pick up the twins from daycare, a task he'd taken over 3 days a week. When he walked in, both children spotted him and came running. "Daddy, Daddy, look what I made." Sienna waved a paper crown. "Dad, can we build the tower tonight? The really tall one?" Felix clutched his hand, standing there in a daycare center wearing a $3,000 suit now decorated with Sienna's sticky handprints. Lucius Blackwell realized he'd spent 35 years chasing the wrong definition of wealth. True wealth wasn't in his bank account. It was right here. 2 3-year-olds who called him Daddy, a woman who was teaching him what real strength looked like, and a life that mattered in ways balance sheets could never measure. He'd inherited billions from his father. But these children, this family, this was the fortune that actually made him rich. For Iris, learning to share responsibility was a daily exercise in letting go. She'd been independent for so long that accepting help felt like admitting weakness. But Lucius was relentless in his support, and slowly she learned to accept it. When her car finally died completely, Lucius offered to buy her a new one. She'd initially refused, but he'd pointed out calmly that it wasn't about her. It was about making sure his children had safe, reliable transportation. She'd accepted a modest sedan, not the luxury SUV he'd suggested, but a compromise they could both live with. When the twins got sick, both of them, simultaneously, with a stomach virus that had Iris cleaning up accidents around the clock, Lucius had shown up with supplies and stayed for 3 days. He'd taken the night shifts, letting Iris sleep, and hadn't complained once about the unglamorous reality of parenting sick toddlers. "This is what partners do," he'd said when she tried to thank him. "We share the hard parts, not just the good ones. Partners." The word settled something in Iris's chest. When her lease came up for renewal and the landlord raised rent by an amount she couldn't afford, Iris had panicked. But before she could figure out a solution, Lucius had made a suggestion. "Move in with me." The words had hung in the air between them. They'd been co-parenting successfully for 5 months, and something deeper had been growing between them. Attraction, affection, maybe even love. But living together felt enormous. "The penthouse has 4 bedrooms, Lucius continued. "The twins could each have their own room. There's space for you to have a studio if you want. And we're together most evenings anyway. It would be easier, more stable for them." "Lucius, I can't just move into your penthouse. It's too much." "Why? Because it makes you uncomfortable to accept help? Or because you're scared of what it means?" "Both. Definitely both. We're not just co-parents anymore," Lucius said quietly. "You know that. I know you feel what I feel. The question is whether you're brave enough to trust it. Brave enough to trust." The same words she told her children about doing the right thing, even when scared. The decision to move in together came 2 weeks later, precipitated by a moment so simple it was almost ridiculous. Lucius had been at the apartment for dinner, a regular occurrence. After eating, the twins had begged for a movie. So all 4 of them had piled onto Iris's small couch, Felix curled against Lucius's side, Sienna sprawled across both their laps, while some animated film played on the television. Halfway through, Iris had looked over to find Lucius asleep, one arm around Felix, his other hand resting on Sienna's back. Both children were drowsing, completely content. This was family. Not perfect, not without complications, but real and warm and right. When the movie ended, Iris had gently woken everyone. Lucius had helped her get the twins ready for bed, a routine they'd fallen into naturally. He'd read Felix his required bedtime story while Iris braided Sienna's hair. They'd tucked them in together, standing side by side in the doorway watching them sleep. "I don't want to leave," Lucius had admitted quietly. "I hate leaving them every night. Hate leaving you." "Then don't," Iris had heard herself say. "We'll move in. Not because I need you to save me, but because this—" She gestured to the apartment, the sleeping children, the space between them. "This works. We work. You're sure?" "I'm terrified. But I'm sure." They'd moved in 3 weeks later. The twins had been thrilled. "We get our own rooms, and there's a pool, and Daddy is there every morning." The adjustment had been easier than Iris expected. Yes, the penthouse was enormous compared to her apartment. Yes, she still felt occasionally out of place among Lucius's expensive things. But it was also filled with her children's laughter, with family dinners and movie nights, and the comfortable chaos of daily life. Small victories accumulated. Felix's pride when he learned to swim in the building's pool. Sienna's dance performances in the living room. Family dinners where they all cooked together. Well, Lucius and Iris cooked, while the twins helped by making messes and stealing ingredients. One night, 6 months after moving in, Iris found Lucius in the twins' room long after they'd gone to sleep. He was just sitting in the chair between their beds, watching them. "You okay?" she asked softly. "I was thinking about my father," Lucius said. "How he measured success by profit margins and business victories. How he was never satisfied, never present. You're nothing like him. I know." "Because of them," he gestured to the sleeping children. "They taught me what actually matters. Felix with his quiet wisdom, Sienna with her absolute joy. They're the best thing I never knew I needed." Iris sat on the arm of the chair, and Lucius pulled her into his lap, both of them watching their children sleep. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For being brave enough to tell me. for giving me this." His arms tightened around her. "For building this family even when it was hard." "We built it together," Iris corrected. "I just took 3 years longer to let you help." They sat there in the darkness, two people who'd found each other in pain and built something beautiful from broken pieces. Not perfect, never perfect, but real and strong, and theirs. A family formed not from a traditional path, but from courage and honesty and love that refused to give up. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything. "Mama, where are we going?" Sienna asked for the 15th time from her car seat. "It's a surprise," Iris repeated, catching Lucius's amused glance in the rearview mirror. "I don't like surprises," Felix announced seriously. "Surprises make me anxious." "You'll like this one, buddy," Lucius promised. "Trust me." It was a Saturday in late October, exactly 1 year since that gallery opening where Iris and Lucius had reunited. A year since the truth had come crashing out and rebuilt their lives into something neither had imagined possible. Maya was in the back seat with the twins, having been mysteriously invited on this family outing. She'd been giving Iris knowing looks all morning but refused to explain what she knew. "You're in on this, aren't you?" Iris accused. "I plead the fifth," Maya said, grinning. The car pulled up to the Grand Meridian Hotel, and Iris's breath caught. She hadn't been back here since that night 4 years ago, the night that had changed everything. "Lucius." "What?" "Just trust me," he said softly, coming around to open her door. The twins tumbled out, immediately awed by the hotel's grandeur. "This place is fancy," Sienna declared loudly enough that several people turned to look. "Very fancy," Felix agreed, taking it all in with those observant grey eyes. They bypassed the lobby, heading straight for the elevators. Lucius pressed the button for the 42nd floor, the penthouse level. Iris's heart hammered. "You didn't?" "I did." The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse suite Iris remembered. The same space where she'd spent one perfect night 4 years ago, where she'd felt cherished and seen and absolutely terrified. But it looked completely different. The impersonal hotel elegance was gone. In its place was warmth, color, life. The living room had been transformed into a space clearly designed for family. Whoa, both twins breathed simultaneously. There were toys, not the cheap plastic kind from discount stores, but beautiful wooden toys and art supplies and building materials. Books lined new shelves at child height. The dangerous corners were padded. The floor-to-ceiling windows had additional safety locks. "What is this place?" Sienna demanded. "This is where your mama and I first met," Lucius explained, kneeling to their level. 4 years ago, we spent one night here talking and getting to know each other, and we made the decision that eventually led to you both being born. This is where we started," Felix asked. "This is where everything started," Iris confirmed, her throat tight with emotion. The suite had been rented for the weekend. Lucius's doing, obviously, but more than just rented. Transformed, made into a space that honored their past while celebrating their present. "There's more," Maya said, pulling out her phone. "I'm going to take these 2 troublemakers to explore while you 2 talk." "I'm not a troublemaker," Sienna protested. "I'm a princess. You're a troublemaking princess," Maya corrected affectionately. "Come on, I saw a room with dress-up clothes, and you know you want to investigate." That was all the invitation Sienna needed. She grabbed Felix's hand and dragged him toward one of the bedrooms, Maya following with an encouraging smile toward Iris. Leaving Iris and Lucius alone in the space where their story had begun, Iris walked through the suite slowly, taking in all the details. The main bedroom, where they'd first made love, had been set up as a family. Space with a massive bed that could fit all 4 of them comfortably. Photos lined the dresser, the twins at various ages, family pictures from the past year, even the ultrasound image that had started everything. The second bedroom was clearly for the twins, bunk beds painted in their favorite colors, stuffed animals arranged carefully, their names spelled out in wooden letters on the wall. "You did all this?" Iris asked, overwhelmed. "I wanted to bring you back here," Lucius said, coming up behind her. "To the place where we started. But I wanted it to be different. Not the sterile hotel suite where two broken strangers found solace. I wanted it to be a space that reflected who we've become. A family. Lucius, let me show you something else. He led her to the balcony, the same balcony where they'd stood that morning 4 years ago, watching the sunrise over Manhattan, promising to see each other again. The city sprawled before them, just as it had then. But everything else had changed. The balcony had been decorated simply but beautifully. Candles lined the railing, unlit in the afternoon sun. Flowers, emerald green roses, the color of the dress she'd worn that night, filled crystal vases. 4 years ago we stood on this balcony, Lucius said quietly. You were wearing a borrowed emerald dress and looking at the city like you were trying to memorize it. I was falling in love with you and didn't even know it yet. Iris's eyes filled with tears. I remember. You held my hand and promised we'd see each other again. Then I broke that promise. You came back, though. Eventually. And we built something real from one perfect night and 3 years of regret. We did. Iris, this year has been the best year of my life, watching Felix learn to read, listening to Sienna's endless stories, falling asleep with you every night, and waking up knowing you're still there, creating a family from broken pieces and making it whole. He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. That night 4 years ago, I told you I didn't want what we had to end. I asked you to stay, and you left, and it broke my heart. But now I understand. You needed to leave. We both needed to grow into people who could handle this, who could be brave enough to choose each other every day. Lucius, what are you saying? He smiled, nervous and hopeful and absolutely sincere. I'm saying that I'm ready to ask you to stay again, but this time I want it to be forever. Lucius released one of her hands to reach into his pocket. When his hand emerged, it held a small velvet box. Iris's breath stopped completely. Iris Noir, Lucius began, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. You walked into my life when I was at my lowest. My father had just died, leaving me obligations I didn't want, and a future that felt hollow. I was successful but empty, rich but alone. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a single emerald surrounded by diamonds. Then you appeared, looking as lost as I felt. And for a few hours, we weren't lost anymore. We found each other. We found hope in shared pain and possibility in connection. You left, and I spent 3 years thinking I'd lost the one real thing I'd ever had. But you came back. You told me about Felix and Sienna. You gave me a family I never knew I needed. You taught me what actually matters. Tears streamed down Iris's face. Lucius, I'm not proposing because of obligation, he said firmly. Not because of the twins, though they're the greatest gift you could have given me. Not because it's the right thing to do, or because our families expect it. He knelt on the balcony, the same balcony where their story had started, the city witness to this moment, just as it had been to that first dawn. I'm proposing because I'm completely, irrevocably, impossibly in love with you. With your strength and your stubbornness, with the way you see beauty in broken things, with your fierce love for our children and your courage in facing your fears. I love how you still won't let me buy you things without arguing, Lucius continued, his voice thick with emotion. How you insist on contributing to household expenses, even though you don't have to. How you value independence, even while learning to accept partnership. I love that you make me laugh when I'm stressed, that you call me out when I'm being ridiculous, that you love our children with a ferocity that amazes me every day. I love that you're teaching me what real strength looks like, not the appearance of having everything together, but the courage to keep going even when things fall apart, to make mistakes and own them, to be vulnerable even when it terrifies you. The ring caught the afternoon light, emerald gleaming. I want to spend the rest of my life loving you, not just co-parenting with you, not just living together because it's convenient. I want to marry you. I want to promise forever. I want to build a life where we're partners in everything. His voice broke slightly. I want to stand beside you through every struggle and celebrate every victory. I want to raise our children together, I want to grow old with you and look back on this moment as the day everything became official. Iris, will you marry me? Not because I'm rich or because it makes sense or because of the twins, but because I love you, because you're my person, because 4 years ago, you became the most important thing in my life, and every day since has only confirmed it. Will you stay, this time, forever? Iris couldn't speak past the tears, couldn't form words around the emotion choking her throat. So she did the only thing she could. She nodded frantically, then managed to choke out, yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Lucius stood, sliding the ring onto her finger with shaking hands. It fit perfectly, of course it did. He'd probably measured her other rings, planned this down to the smallest detail. Then he was kissing her, and she was kissing him back, and 4 years of journey, of pain, and fear, and growth, and love, culminated in this moment on a balcony overlooking Manhattan. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, both crying, Iris touched his face with trembling hands. I love you, she said. I have since that first night, even though I ran from it. I love you for being patient with me, for not giving up even when I gave you every reason to, for loving our children, for seeing me, really seeing me, and choosing me anyway. Always you, Lucius said. It was always going to be you. A crash from inside the suite made them both jump. They turned to find Sienna standing in the doorway, eyes wide, with Felix right behind her. Did Daddy just marry Mama? Sienna demanded. He proposed, Maya corrected, appearing behind the twins with her phone out, clearly having filmed the whole thing. The marriage comes later. What's proposed? Felix asked. Iris knelt down, holding out her hand to show them the ring. It means Daddy asked me to marry him, to be a family officially. What do you think about that? Sienna squealed, an ear-piercing sound of pure joy. Do we get to be a real family, with a wedding and a dress and cake? All of that, Lucius confirmed. Felix was quieter, processing. Then, does this mean you'll have the same last name as us? If your mama takes my name, yes. Blackwell, Felix tested. Iris Blackwell, Sienna and Felix Blackwell. We match, Sienna declared. I like matching. Felix looked between his parents seriously. And you'll both be together? No one's leaving? The question hit hard, evidence that even at 4 years old, these children understood the concept of abandonment, of people leaving. Iris pulled him close. No one's leaving. We're a family. Forever. Promise. Felix's voice was small. I promise, both parents said simultaneously. Satisfied, Felix allowed himself to smile. Okay. That's good. They spent the afternoon in that transformed suite, a family celebrating their new future. Maya ordered room service, and they had an impromptu engagement party with sparkling cider and the twins' enthusiastic dancing. But there was one more surprise. At 6 p.m., there was a knock on the suite door. Lucius answered it, stepping aside to reveal Iris's mother and Grandma Rose, who'd made the trip from Vermont. Grandma. Iris gasped, rushing over. Her grandmother was in a wheelchair now, still recovering from the stroke, but her eyes were bright and alert. Did you really think I'd miss this? Grandma Rose asked, her voice slightly slurred but understandable. Maya called me weeks ago to make sure I could be here. You knew? Iris looked at her best friend in amazement. Lucius wanted your family here, Maya explained. So we made it happen. Iris's mother hugged her daughter tightly. I'm so happy for you, sweetheart. You deserve this. You've worked so hard, sacrificed so much. You deserve to be loved like this. The twins descended on their great-grandmother with gentle enthusiasm. They had been taught to be careful with Grandma Rose, who was fragile but fierce. Tell me about the proposal, Grandma Rose demanded. I want all the details. So Iris told the story while Lucius ordered more room service and Maya documented everything with her phone. They gathered in that suite, 3 generations, a family built from love and perseverance and the refusal to give up. Grandma Rose reached for Iris's hand, examining the ring with approval. Your grandfather proposed to me on a beach, she said. I was 17, he was 19, and everyone said we were too young. We were married for 43 years before he passed. What's the secret? Iris asked. How do you make it last? You choose each other, every single day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Grandma Rose looked at Lucius with sharp assessment. You'll choose her, even when she's stubborn and scared and tries to push you away. Every day, Lucius promised. I've already proven that, haven't I? Yes, you have. Grandma Rose smiled. Then you have my blessing. Make my granddaughter happy. That's the easiest promise I'll ever make. They planned the wedding for December, a small, intimate ceremony at the Meridian Gallery where they'd reunited. Catherine was thrilled to host, arranging for the gallery to be closed to the public for the afternoon. The space was decorated simply but beautifully, white flowers and soft lighting that made the art installations glow. Only 50 guests attended, close family, real friends, people who'd been part of their journey. Maya was maid of honor, of course. Lucius's business partner stood as best man, though he'd confessed to being surprised that the notorious bachelor was actually settling down. But the real stars of the ceremony were the twins. Sienna took her role as flower girl with utmost seriousness, wearing a purple dress with sparkles that she'd picked out herself. She scattered petals down the aisle with dramatic flair occasionally, stopping to announce to guests that this is my mama getting married. Felix carried the rings on a small pillow, walking with careful precision to ensure he didn't drop them. His little suit was a miniature version of Lucius's, and seeing them together, father and son matching, made everyone tear up. Mama looks like a princess. Sienna stage whispered loudly as Iris walked down the aisle. She wasn't wrong. Iris wore a simple ivory dress, elegant without being ostentatious, beautiful without trying too hard. Her hair was down, the way Lucius loved it. The emerald engagement ring caught the gallery lights. She'd walked herself down the aisle, no one to give her away because she wasn't property to be transferred. But halfway down, both twins had broken formation to take her hands, one on each side. So she'd walk to her future, flanked by her children, by the greatest gifts of that one reckless night. Lucius waited at the altar, and the expression on his face when he saw her, wonder and love and absolute certainty, made every difficult moment worth it. The ceremony was personal, officiated by a close friend. They'd written their own vows. Lucius went first. Iris, 4 years ago, you walked into my life for one night. But that one night changed everything. You showed me what it meant to be truly seen. Then you disappeared, and I thought I'd lost you forever. But you came back. You gave me the greatest gifts. Felix and Sienna, yes, but also the chance to be better, to be the man you deserve, the father they deserve, the partner you need. I promise to choose you every day, to support your independence while being your safe place to land, to raise our children with you as equals, to love you through the easy moments and the hard ones, to be patient when you're scared and strong when you need me to be, to never make you feel less than the incredible woman you are. You saved me from a life that looked successful but felt empty. I promise to spend forever showing you that you saved yourself too, that your strength is what brought us here. I love you, Iris, completely, forever. By the time he finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the gallery. Iris's voice shook when it was her turn, but she pushed through. Lucius, I spent most of my life running from fear. Fear of needing someone, fear of being vulnerable, fear of being hurt like my father hurt my family. When we met, I ran from the best thing that ever happened to me. I convinced myself it was the right choice, the safe choice, but I was just scared. Scared of loving you, scared of the possibility that you might leave. You've taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing the right thing despite being terrified. Telling you about the twins was the scariest thing I've ever done. Moving in with you, trusting you, letting you be part of our lives. Every step was terrifying. But you've shown me that vulnerability isn't weakness, that asking for help doesn't make me less. That partnership doesn't mean losing myself. It means finding someone who helps me become more. You've been patient with my stubbornness, Iris continued. You've respected my need for independence while gently teaching me that I don't have to do everything alone. You've loved our children so fiercely, so completely, that they've never questioned whether they were wanted. I promise to keep choosing courage over fear, to be vulnerable with you, even when it's uncomfortable, to trust that you're not going anywhere, to build this life we're creating with honesty and openness. I promise to be your partner, not your dependent, not your project, but your equal, to support your dreams while pursuing my own, to raise our children together, learning and growing as we go, to love you through the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of building a life together. You've shown me what real love looks like, not the fairy tale version, but the kind that shows up every day. That works through conflicts. They choose each other over and over. I promise to show you that same love for the rest of our lives. When they exchanged rings, Felix handed over the pillow with careful solemnity. Don't drop them, he whispered seriously. They're important. Very important, Lucius agreed, accepting the rings. Just like you, buddy. He slid Iris's wedding band next to her engagement ring, a perfect match, like they'd been designed together. She did the same for him, her hands trembling. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the officiant declared. You may kiss your bride. The kiss was sweet and tender, full of promise, and when they turned to face their small gathering, both twins rushed forward, hugging their legs. We're married, Sienna announced to the room. All of us, we're a married family. Technically, only Iris and Lucius were married, but the sentiment was right. This wasn't just two people joining lives. This was a family becoming official. At the reception, held in the same gallery with catering and dancing and all the twins could eat, Lucius gave a speech. Someone told me recently that mistakes don't define us, he said, looking directly at Iris. Our corrections do, our ability to acknowledge when we've been wrong, to make amends, to do better. Iris made mistakes, so did I. We both let fear guide us when we should have chosen courage. But she had the bravery to correct those mistakes, to tell me the truth even when it was terrifying, to give me a chance to be the father I never knew I wanted to be. That correction, that choice to be honest and vulnerable, gave us this. He gestured to the room, to their children dancing with Maya, to Grandma Rose watching with tears of joy. It gave us a family, purpose, love that's real because it's been tested and survived. So here's to corrections, here's to second chances, here's to building something beautiful from broken pieces. The evening continued with dancing and laughter. Felix made it exactly 45 minutes before falling asleep on a bench, exhausted by the excitement. Sienna lasted another hour, fueled by cake and pure determination, before crashing hard. Maya gathered both sleeping children. I'm taking these two back to the hotel. You two enjoy your wedding night. You're amazing, Iris said, hugging her best friend. I couldn't have done any of this without you. You could have. You're stronger than you know, but I'm glad you didn't have to. Maya looked between Iris and Lucius with satisfaction. You two are good together. You balance each other. When the guests had finally departed, and it was just the two of them, in the empty gallery, Iris kicked off her heels with a sigh of relief. We did it, she said. We're actually married. Having regrets already? Lucius teased. Not even a little. She walked back to him, and he pulled her into his arms. I'm just amazed. 4 years ago, I was convinced I'd be alone forever, that I wasn't worth someone staying for, and now I'm married to you. We have 2 incredible children. I have a career I love. I have family and friends, and a life I never imagined possible. You built this life, Lucius reminded her. Your strength, your determination, your refusal to give up, even when things were impossible. I'm just lucky you let me be part of it. They swayed together in the empty gallery, no music playing, just 2 people holding each other. Do you ever think about how different things would be if I hadn't run? Iris asked quietly. If I'd stayed that morning, if I'd called you when I found out I was pregnant. All the time, Lucius admitted. I think about how I could have been there for the pregnancy, for the twins' birth, for their first words and first steps. I think about how much easier your life would have been with support. But I also think we might not have made it. You needed to prove to yourself that you could survive alone, that you were strong enough, and I needed to hit rock bottom before I understood what actually mattered. He kissed her forehead. Running from fear delayed our healing. It costs us time we can't get back. But it also meant that when we came together, we were ready. We were people who could build something lasting. So you don't regret the lost time. I regret that you struggled alone. I regret missing moments with the twins. But I don't regret the journey that brought us here. Every painful step was necessary to become who we needed to be. Iris thought about that. About the years of struggle that had forged her into someone strong enough to accept help. About the loneliness that had taught Lucius what he was missing. About how sometimes the hardest paths led to the most meaningful destinations. I love you, she said simply, for being patient, for not giving up, for loving our children, for choosing me every day. Every day, Lucius promised, for the rest of our lives. 6 months after the wedding, Iris stood in the Meridian Gallery preparing for an exhibition. She'd curated herself, reconstructed, finding beauty in the broken. The theme was personal. Artists who'd created masterpieces from trauma, who'd turned pain into something meaningful. It was her journey reflected in art, proof that beauty could emerge from the hardest experiences. Lucius arrived with the twins, after picking them up from their new preschool, a place they both loved, where Felix thrived in structured learning and Sienna charmed everyone she met. "Mama!" Sienna ran to her, arms outstretched. "Look what I painted today." She presented a picture of 4 stick figures holding hands. "That's our family," she explained proudly. "You and Daddy and me and Felix. We're all together." Iris hung the painting in her office, right next to her college diploma and professional certifications. A reminder of what actually mattered. That evening, after the twins were in bed, Iris and Lucius sat on their balcony. A different balcony than the Grand Meridian, but the view was just as spectacular. "Do you remember that night?" Iris asked. 4.5 years ago, when 2 broken strangers found each other in a hotel bar. I remember every detail. Your emerald dress, the way you looked at me like you actually saw me, the feeling that for the first time in my life, I wasn't alone. We were so lost. We found each other. Then I ran away. Then you came back. Lucius pulled her closer. And we built this. Not perfect, not without struggle, but real. A family, a life, love that's been tested and survived. Iris thought about their journey. One reckless night, 3 years of separation, the terrifying confession, the slow building of trust, the mistakes and corrections, the fear and courage, the breaking and rebuilding. Their story wasn't a fairy tale. It was messy and complicated and real. But that's what made it beautiful. "What do you think our story means?" Iris asked. "Not just for us, but for anyone hearing it." Lucius was quiet for a moment, considering. "I think it means that mistakes aren't the end, that you can run from something good and still find your way back. That courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite being terrified. I think it means vulnerability is strength," Iris added. "That asking for help doesn't make you weak. That building something real requires honesty, even when the truth is painful. I think it means that love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice. Every single day, choosing each other, choosing to work through conflicts, choosing to be present and patient and partners. I think it means that the hardest paths can lead to the most beautiful destinations," Iris said softly. "That suffering doesn't have to be meaningless, that you can take pain and transform it into something that matters." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights, 2 people who'd found each other in darkness and built a life in the light. Their story had started with one perfect night. It had survived 3 years of separation and fear. It had been rebuilt with honesty and courage and daily choice. And it would continue, not as a fairy tale, but as something better, something real. A love story that proved happily ever after wasn't about perfection. It was about 2 imperfect people choosing each other again and again, through every struggle and triumph. It was about building a family from broken pieces and making something whole. It was about courage over fear, vulnerability as strength, and the transformative power of love that refuses to give up. It was their story, messy, complicated, absolutely beautiful. And it was just beginning. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through Iris and Lucius's story here on Mr. Steele Rich Stories. If you made it to the end, you're probably feeling all the emotions right now. And that's exactly what we wanted. Stories like this remind us that life doesn't follow a neat script, that we make mistakes and have to live with consequences. But they also remind us that it's never too late to make things right. That courage can change everything. That love, real, messy, complicated love, is worth fighting for. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button right now. It helps more people find these meaningful stories. Share it with someone who needs to hear a message about second chances and the power of choosing courage over fear. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Mr. Steele Rich Stories. We bring you romance stories that go deeper than surface-level drama. Stories about real people facing real challenges and finding their way to love through honesty, growth, and transformation. Drop a comment below and tell us, what lesson from Iris and Lucius's story resonated most with you? Was it the courage to tell the truth, the importance of vulnerability, the idea that mistakes don't define us, our corrections do, or something else entirely? I read every comment, and I love hearing how these stories impact you. Your thoughts and perspectives matter. And if you want more stories like this, stories that make you think, make you feel, and remind you why love matters, check out our playlist of completed stories. There's something for everyone. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for investing your time in Iris and Lucius's journey. Thank you for believing that stories about courage, vulnerability, and transformation matter. This is Mr. Steele Rich Stories, reminding you that your story isn't over yet, that it's never too late to choose courage. That vulnerability is strength. That love, real love, requires daily choice, but is absolutely worth it. Until next time, keep choosing courage over fear. Keep being vulnerable even when it's scary. Keep believing that beautiful things can be built from broken pieces. Because if Iris and Lucius taught us anything, it's that the best stories are the ones where imperfect people choose each other again and again and build something extraordinary from the mess. See you in the next story. Before you go, I want to leave you with one final question to think about. What lesson from Iris and Lucius's story resonated most with you? Was it Iris learning that vulnerability isn't weakness but strength? That asking for help doesn't diminish her independence? Was it Lucius discovering that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts but in relationships and moments that matter? Was it the idea that running from fear only delays healing, not prevents it? Was it the understanding that mistakes don't define us, our willingness to correct them does? Was it the reminder that real love isn't a feeling, but a daily choice to show up, work through conflicts, and choose each other even when it's hard? Or was it something else entirely? A moment, a line, a realization that spoke directly to your own journey? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share what touched you, what challenged you, what made you think differently about love, courage, or second chances. And if Iris's journey from fear to courage inspired you, if Lucius's transformation from hollow success to meaningful connection moved you, if their story reminded you that it's never too late to make things right, share this video with someone who needs to hear that message. Because of these stories, they're more than entertainment. They're reminders that we're all works in progress. That growth is possible. That love, messy, complicated, real love, can transform everything. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of a community that believes stories matter. Now go out there and choose courage over fear. Be vulnerable, even when it's terrifying. Correct your mistakes instead of hiding from them. And build something beautiful from whatever broken pieces life has given you. You've got this. This is Mr. Steele Rich Stories, signing off. But not goodbye, just see you in the next story.